Okay, we're ready to get started. Today is Tuesday, April 28th, 2026, and this is the City Council's work session. I am calling this meeting to order and giving notice to members of the City Council and to the public that at this meeting, the City Council may vote to go into executive session for discussion and consultation with the city's attorneys for legal advice on any item listed on the following agenda. Can we have roll call?
Mayor Daggett,
Here.
Vice Mayor Sweet,
Here.
Councilmember Aslan,
Here.
Councilmember Garcia, Councilmember House,
Present.
Councilmember Matthews,
Here.
Councilmember Spence.
Here.
Councilmember Spence, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you. Please stand as you're able.
Vice Mayor, would you read our mission statement?
The mission of the City of Flagstaff is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all.
Thank you. Councilmember House, could you read our land acknowledgement?
Thank you, Mayor. The Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by Native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you. All right, we're at open call to the public, which enables the public to address the council about anything that is not on tonight's printed agenda. I don't see any open call to the public. All right, moving down to April work anniversaries. Shannon.
Thank you, Mayor. Give me just one moment. We'll open up our presentation for today. So we are celebrating the month of April. Here we are at the end of the month, and for our first year anniversaries, we've got some individuals from our court, as well as our Flagstaff Police Department, pros, and so we are excited for these folks and their completion of their first year with the City of Flagstaff. Moving on to our 5th year anniversaries, we have Susanna Libby. She is a library clerk, part of our Economic Vitality Division. Moving on to our 10th year anniversaries, we have Adriana Fisher. You probably have seen her before as a representative of our housing team, one of our newest divisions. Another 10-year anniversary is Christopher Magnan. He is part of our airport, so he is an airport operations employee as well as aircraft rescue firefighting lead worker. And then lastly, we have 125 anniversary this month. This is for Greg McLaughlin. He's a fire captain with our Flagstaff Fire Department. He, throughout his career, has made lasting impacts to the department and the community he serves. He began his career with Crew 1, managing forest fuels and supporting emergent wildfire response around the city. His early work played a vital role in protecting Flagstaff's wildland-urban interface and reducing the risk of catastrophic wildfire. From there, he transitioned from fuels to structure and was hired as a firefighter, eventually promoting to his current role as a captain EMT, a position he's held for the past 12 years. Greg has been a steady, highly respected leader known for guiding, mentoring, and developing countless firefighters under his command. He also holds certifications in hazardous materials and technical rescue, providing critical response to the community during complex rescue incidents and hazardous material operations. He's been deeply involved in the Wildland Call-Out Program, responding to major incidents across the Southwest. His leadership extended beyond the fire line as he took on significant responsibility within the health and wellness program. He's championed numerous cancer prevention initiatives and recently coordinated department-wide throat cancer screenings, an effort that reflects his unwavering commitment to firefighter health and safety. Greg is an outstanding leader whose influence reaches far beyond the calls he has run. His dedication, innovation, and care for his fellow firefighters have strengthened this organization and will continue to shape it for years to come. Thank you, Greg, for your 25 years of exceptional service, leadership, and dedication to our city of Flagstaff. So if we can take a moment and congratulate Greg and the rest of this group. Thank you, council. We'll see you again next month.
Thank you, Shannon. And thank you, City of Flagstaff staff, for all your great work. We are now down to Flagstaff Police Department 2025 annual accomplishments.
As we get this, mayor, vice mayor, members of council, city managers, as we get this loaded, I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce you to our newest member of the Flagstaff Police Department. This is our comfort dog, Bear. We'll bring Bear around. Bear's awesome, and this is Officer Madrano, who's sole responsibility. No, just kidding. Multiple responsibilities, but responsibility is Bear. I can't tell you enough with some lived experience and the amount of trauma that first responders, staff go through. Having something as simple as this, and when I know there's dog and animal lovers up here, as one component in a really dynamic wellness approach to the hearts and minds of our staff is instrumental. And we'll talk a little bit more, but we wanted to bring Bear in today, and it's always good to kick off a staff presentation with an animal. So we'll let Bear go around a little bit.
Chief, he gave me a kiss.
Yeah. We do have a vision as we continue to modernize and operationalize things. We see a tremendous need for this, and I know Councilmember House, you had talked about the wellness approach in the budget retreat for our comms room. Those micro traumas that they experience by the dozens, almost hourly, to have something like this in our comms room would be incredibly powerful. So look at that. Yeah. I'm glad I don't have a timer going, because this would be cutting. Yeah, but we just wanted to bring you in, and the other thing I wanted to say, this is everybody's. Bear is everybody's. And so if there's anybody else within Team Flagstaff or anything you're doing in the community and you would like us to attend and bring Bear, we've had Bear out at some community events, and it's a game changer on a lot of levels. Please reach out to us and let us bring Bear and Roger, because it does wonders in the community on a whole host of levels.
How about every council meeting?
Yeah, we could work on that. That might not be a bad idea, Mayor. So, I'm Sean Conley, I'm your police chief, and it's just a tremendous honor today to be able to talk to you about a year in review. You know, 2 Ps, pride and professionalism, I think is what I'm so proud of for this last year's accomplishments. And I stand before you with representatives of our executive team with unshakable resolve related to the work of the women and men of the Flagstaff Police Department. Ryan Beckman is our newly appointed Deputy Chief of Criminal Investigations, with Chewy retiring, Charles Hernandez retiring. So life in the big blue machine keep moving on, and we're really proud of him. Deputy Chief C of our patrol division, and then it's Allison, who's just instrumental in a section director of our support services, so they're here to support. But we don't stand here today as executives taking credit for the work. The reality of what you're about to see and experience here is a tribute to the people, the doers. And that's our most important treasure in what we do, and it's their accomplishments. I'm just honored to be able to sit up here and talk a little bit about them. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Before you on the slide is our mission statement. You know, the mission of the Flagstaff Police Department is to protect and preserve life, property, and public order. I think it's paramount that we don't forget our role in this community. And we do that through elite service, and that could be a whole nother presentation to our community. You see we've created a mission poster. We're doing a lot of messaging and imaging as part of our culture related to that. Interwoven into our mission are our values, and that's integrity, empathy, preservation of life, courage, elite service, and transparency. And that's our promise. You know, it's a promise we live by daily. We try to rehearse this in our minds. Also on that image, you see our new patch. This is not the chief sitting in a corner coming up with new stuff. We empower our members to build their culture. And the members came up with this patch, which I think represents a lot of what we believe in. And on the bottom there, you see our 4 stoic virtues that we try to live by. An abundance of temperance and balance in how we handle business. Courage, not just the courage to run towards danger, but the courage to hold ourselves accountable. The courage to pull ourselves back and live a life of service that is appropriate. A sense of justice and wisdom. So I wanted to share that with you. Whoop. Let me see here. So let me talk about kind of the undergird of a police department, and that's our patrol operations. You know, we have 3 sections: patrol operations, criminal investigations, and support services. So last year in our patrol operations, we took about 72,000 calls for service. And I broke these out a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about what the totality of what we do from a service provider and 911 center. But 566 of those calls for service, producing about 188 police reports, were on Mountain Line bus stops and transit centers alone. So we're going to continue to be collaborative and working with Mountain Line and understanding the roles of some of our most needy in this community related to transportation, and then ensuring that they're safe. Our top 3 locations for calls for service in the city last year, that first one on Huntington at 2601 is a Walmart on the east side. Those big box companies and what their service providing there can provide a lot of burden on a police department. We do have a dynamic relationship with them. We're constantly working with them on how to operationalize things at a higher level to reduce calls for service. A lot of that is shoplifting. And so we'll continue to keep our eye on that. 4185 East Huntington is our homeless service provider. Colin sits on the board there. We are vested immensely in our relationship with making sure that they are successful over there. But that is a significant, just under 2,000 calls for service a year over there from a public safety perspective. And that other address, 2700 South Woodlands, is another Walmart. And so as we strategically look at how we resource allocate, we have to be cognizant of these hot spots of calls for service. Another one that's not on here, and we had a great meeting this morning, we're going to continue to talk about, is both of our east and west side libraries. Those are producing significant calls for service right up here with these, so we'll continue to keep our eye on those. We took about 16,599 total police reports last year. We have been flowed on onesies and twosies on each side of this with 51 patrol officers. And if you break that out, that's just over 1,000 calls for service for each officer per year. That's roughly 369 reports each officer is authoring, with 113 arrests per officer per year. From a reduction perspective, I think in this business of policing, you hold me accountable. This community holds this team and our department accountable for reduction in violent crime and victimization. We're a victim-centric police department, first and foremost, but we had an 11% reduction in violent crime last year, and that's healthy. I want to preface it with one thing. Running into this last year, 2025, we had just around a 50% increase in violent crime in this community. So we took some good percentages off of that. You've heard me say there's no one spoke in that bicycle wheel of crime reduction that is the thing that does it all. It's a whole host of collaboration and work that is integrated to include work with our NGOs and our social service providers and our law enforcement partners. We took a 1% reduction in property crime. We had a 10% reduction in shelter-related calls and victimization. So I talked about that being one of our hot spots for calls for service, but I'm really proud of the work. We did a not a threat assessment, but a safety assessment for Ross over there and provided some recommendations for her and her staff on how to do things over there in a safer, anytime you have a low barrier facility. Both EMS and policing are drawn there frequently. So we'll continue to work on that reduction. We are proud of our ability to, within ourselves, create a separate mission for the downtown, and we created a walking beat squad, and they are in our downtown every morning on foot, walking, leading with services, but connecting with people, and then just being visible for the business owners. I hope you felt some of that. I know we've done a lot of work down there. I think there's continued opportunity for modernization and growth in that mission. And in this picture, you see a really cool mission. I had the privilege a couple Wednesdays ago of jumping in this vehicle with Officer Brown and Officer Diaz. Officer Brown is a legacy officer. That's the son of Jen Brown. So we're so proud of him. And then Officer Diaz, and it's a good sign for this police department when we have people from other departments around the state wanting to come here. And he's a recent Spanish-speaking lateral with tons of experience and expertise from Nogales. When we went out and patrolled in this new vehicle, we got this through a state grant, and it allows us incredible access. But they go up monthly in a helicopter through DPS and take a visual map of our community and those areas where people are camping in the woods, experiencing homelessness, that have the ability to potentially set a wildfire, or they're causing a ton of trash and debris, and they spot them, and then they go down and contact them. Again, leading with services and then enforcement. We identified 88 camps in our last aerial oversight. So if you think about 88 separate little places out just on the skirts of town or some in town that are potential wildfire risk and blight risks, we'll continue to be committed to this really important. Campbell Mesa is a success story. They went in there, and there were numerous camps on the edge of Campbell Mesa, and they showed me their work, and they went in there and led with services and some enforcement on the back end, and then the state did a great job of coming up and cleaning up all the aftermath. And now you go through there, and it's beautiful, and then sustaining that. So we'll be committed to that. I know the fire department's also involved in the sheriff's office. Although we've seen nationally a decrease in overdose deaths in America related to fentanyl mostly, we had 23 Narcan saves last year, and I'm really proud of that. The ability of our officers in real time to be out and about in the community with this life-saving tool on their belt is a powerful demonstration of our commitment to life in this community. We had 15 de-escalation incidents, and 10 of them were incredibly significant. And I don't have time to go through all of them, but what you see in these videos and these experiences, and I've had a whole host of community members reach out, is people in significant crisis, either wanting to take their own lives or have the ability with firearms, knives, or objects to hurt other people, and then watching the temperance that I talked about of our officers' ability to communicate, use the appropriate tools. We have Taser 10 now with us, and we have a stun bag. And pepper ball, watching them go through these de-escalations is a significant metric when we're looking at policing in our community, so we're very proud of that. Traffic enforcement and safety, I know you all see a lot of the emails that I see as it relates to community saying, hey, I've got a traffic issue here. We take great pride in our ability to stand up traffic operations, and I know it's a very busy time. I think this last year we saw significant reductions. And I talked about that bicycle wheel. You know, there's a lot of construction in our community currently, and sometimes construction through calming and a lot of having to slow down can produce this. But we had 5 traffic fatalities tragically in this community, and that's a break even for us. So we're going to continue, and I know there's a lot of work going on with safety plans and other things in engineering. Paul Mood, I appreciate you immensely in your approach to engineering to ensure that our roads are safe. We had 34 serious injury collisions, and then we took 1,643 non-injury collisions. Those are both double-digit decreases. We had 9 train-related fatalities last year. We're going to continue to work our best on this. You know, at times with the railroads, I think it can be challenging on a lot of levels operationally. But as we identify an asset map where these are occurring, I think as we move forward, continued onus by the railroads on some of this property on the east side of town, where you have a shelter and food and other things that are attracting them. But we'll continue to work aggressively on that issue. We processed 104 DUI accidents last year. We took a data-driven approach, and we'll talk a little bit more about the importance of it being analytical in our business with your systems of accountability and your systems to measure. But in this, we identified some intersections that we're seeing have our greatest collisions, our greatest citations, and our greatest observed violations. And those are listed there. That's East Ponderosa Parkway and Route 66. That's East Route 66 and 4th Street. It's Milton Road and Butler, Route 66 and Switzer Canyon Drive, and Humphreys and Route 66. So with our traffic enforcement footprint, I will be honest, we've had to cannibalize some of those motor activities into patrol squads, but they're still taking a traffic mindset. I look forward to future growth and our ability to have a fully dynamic and independent traffic safety unit that handles a lot of the things you hear and we hear in community moving forward. The other section that I talked about that's so important, when you talk about the connectivity between a patrol response to victimization and the subsequent handoff to criminal investigations, it's paramount. We could have a conversation that, you know, community really wants to see that blue suit on their doorstep when they make that phone call. But after you've been a victim, how important it is the ability to care for that victim and be able to provide case updates and services moving forward. So it's really important. This small group of detectives handled 2,691 cases. And I want to talk about this clearance rate because it's world class. 2,252. When you look at national data related to clearance rates in police departments, midsize and large, big city, that number is sub 50% in violent crime and sub 50% in property crime. So I appreciate the intimacy and the fortitude with which they're clearing these cases and handling those on behalf of victims. However, I want to preface, our detectives, some of them can take up to 200 cases a year, which is way above the national standard. We like to see that number somewhere between 80 and 120 cases managed in support of victims. So as we continue to look at our strategic plan for 10 years and where we need to be operationally with our staffing, these are those conversations that we're all having. That was about 808 violent crime investigations with 117 arrests. And this is just arrests by the investigation division. A lot of arrests are cleared by patrol and then handed over to investigation. So we call it cleared by patrol or cleared by arrest on that initial 911 call. This is them doing additional follow-up, getting to a place of apprehension and probable cause with a suspect. 200 plus search warrants served. That's significant work. Our SWAT deployments, we had 44 SWAT deployments supporting high-risk operations. This SWAT team is amazing. They're really the only northern region SWAT team, and they have responded all over the northern region last year, whether it's Page, Williams, Winslow, this is it. So we're going to continue to invest in their skill sets and their staffing moving forward, because at times those are our most needed deployments for safety. Our Metro Narcotics Unit, which is a great collaborative of the Sheriff's Office, us, and DPS, seized just in the city 80,000 fentanyl pills last year. Regionally, and we'll talk a little bit about some wards and success, this number's in the hundreds of thousands when you get outside the city limits. North Star Task Force, I'm so proud and humbled to be the chair of the task force and focusing on human trafficking, sex trafficking, and those traumatized through victimization in this horrible crime moving forward. We've really galvanized our ability to collaborate with social service providers. You want to take a survivor mindset on this and a victim mindset on this issue, and you have to have on your side, shouldering with you, these service providers, and it's not just about arrest and apprehension. But we ran 3 anti-human trafficking operations last year. Some of them got some media attention on when we did that, but I appreciate the professionalism with which they went about it. What we did see was that this is going on in our community, in some of the dark underworld, and we have to stay on top of that. We made 27 arrests. And these are individuals that are seducing our youngest in our community to parking lots to do horrible things to them. And so that's why this is important. And we'll continue to move forward. A lot of this is grant funded, and we appreciate the heck out of that. That helps us offset costs. And overall, we talk about being a victim-centric police department. We supported literally thousands of victims in this community through that journey of being victimized. And we're going to continue to be steadfast in how we do that. I know this came up recently in a budget retreat, and we've talked about this, so I wanted to show you a little bit of what this looks like. So twice a week, we have command staff meetings where almost in real time, we are operationalizing our data and trying to be out in front of trends. That's the greatest thing we do. At times, we're incredibly reactionary, and we want to get more to a posture of being ahead of that. In this same report, we have a separate report that is real time. On officer performance related to productivity and what they're doing. But what you see here in front of you is something we go over every week. And as I break it down for you, what you see there is 3 sections, actually 4 sections with a year to date. You see a weekly comparison, a 28-day comparison, and a 56-day comparison. Traditionally in policing, you saw this abundance of focus on the year to date. What are we in February at the year to date? Well, I'll tell you, I don't believe that's operationally sound in a lot of ways because you're not being reactionary and seeing the trends. So we break it out to a weekly, a 28-day, and a 56 that gives us those trends. This is our year-end report. The FBI mandates that we report back in Part 1 violent and Part 1 property crimes. And so what you see there is homicide, sexual assault, robbery, and ag assault for your Part 1 violent. And if in that particular last week of December, what you saw us looking at was a 44% decrease for the week, a 15 for the 28, and a 11. Where you would want to really look at things if you saw that 28 and weekly spiking, even though you had a really sitting on a nice year to date, you'd want to look at that. But there's our 10% reduction year to date, just under 11. And then in your property crimes, it's residential burglary, commercial burglary, burglary from vehicle, auto theft, arson, and larceny and theft. And that was a 1.78 production for us for the year. So I just wanted to give you a little snapshot of those, and we can open this up to questions if you want to interrupt me at any time or take them at the end. The other thing we look at is arrests. We want to make sure our arrests are meaningful. You can go out and cast a broad net and you try to wrest your way to solutions, but I think historically that's proven very challenging. So we break those down into felony, misdemeanor, and warrants, and then constantly monitoring our calls for service and the priorities. If you look there, you see a 2% reduction overall, which is a significant reduction in work for our officers as we try to get them to a greater posture with future staffing models of a 40% available time and a 10-hour day. We're right around a 10% available time right now. We did see an increase in domestic violence in our community, and I think we have a lot of work to do in partnership with Victim Witness. Some of those things that happen behind closed doors are challenging for us to get on trends with, and we have some ideas and some stuff that hopefully we can share with you moving forward on that. The other part of this is traffic. We talked about those traffic numbers earlier, but that's a breakdown of the fatality, the injury, non-injury, DUI investigations, DUI accidents, and traffic stops. One of the things you want to constantly monitor as it relates to performance is this traffic stop number. And if you start to see that slip in the amount of traffic stops we're doing proactively and an increase in collisions, and then take that and overlay it with a hot spot or a location, it'll be incumbent upon the deputy chiefs to then operationalize onto that footprint to make sure we don't have a growing trend from a safety perspective.
Chief, excuse me.
You bet.
Councilmember House has a question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief, for the information so far, and I hate to cut off your flow. Can you go back 2 slides?
Uh-oh. I don't know, Allison, oh, previous, look at that. Allison, can you help me with this?
Thank you. I'm hoping you can give a little bit more insight or description of the difference between priority 1 through 3 calls for service and
Yeah.
priorities 4 through 6.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much, Councilmember House. I think a lot of times you'll see police departments, and I think we had even more than 6 at times, having so many priorities. The big ones are the priority 1 for 3. Priority 1 is a crime in progress, and we call it a hot call, and that's going to be toned out, and we want to get there as fast as possible. So that's a crime in progress. That's a shooting, a stabbing, where there's active victimization going on. When you look at then a priority 2 call, that could be something where victimization has occurred and the suspect left 5 minutes ago, but we still want to get there as quick as possible. When you start to look at the 3s through 6s, that's people late reporting. That's getting home and maybe seeing that something's missing from your house. Not a lot of suspect information. Sometimes that can be some of our ordinance-related issues where we have loud noise and other conversations about some of those types of quality of life crimes. And then it's very insightful, council member. That's one of the things that through sound procedure, those dispatchers are having to manage that prioritization in real time to ensure. And there'll be times in this community where we are going to a really low priority call that has no victimization, and maybe it is a noise issue. And then we're en route or we're on scene and there's a violent incident up the road, and the officers have to look, sometimes because of our staffing footprint, have to look that person in the face. I'm going to get back to you, but I've got to go up the street because there's victimization going on with violent crime. So I hope that helped you. I think, yeah.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's also really worth pointing out, because of the overall decrease that we're seeing in that priority 1 through 3, or that you all are seeing
Yeah.
in that priority 1 through 3, it's almost a 6% decrease. And I think that's really worth pointing out and highlighting. Compared to it looks like there's an increase on the next level, but those kind of lower priority calls. And I think that's just pretty significant, so
I
thank you.
appreciate your attention to that detail. I'm kind of a geek on that stuff. And so I think, and what's interesting too, is you see some of the symmetry at times between those reductions, available time, overall crime reductions. There's an interwovenness to it all, so I appreciate that. One of the most important, if not the most important, scaffolding for us is our communication center. I'm so proud of the work that's been done. We had some significant change in leadership within this center, and we have produced great results. We've hired 17 people between July and October. There was 100% turnover in this comm center historically. So think about a manager or a leader trying to keep their operational footprint on such an important mission with that kind of turnover. So we took a deep dive into culture, how we were treating people, what the mission was, what the environment felt like, and we've taken that to a 6% turnover rate, which I think is incredibly strong. And you'll see some staffing. These are some pictures. Casey's been instrumental. There's good old Casey giving us a big handshake and a smile. Allison has been paramount on a lot of levels. And then you see the work they've done inside their room just to make that feel more welcoming in a healthier work environment. They managed overall 181,560 total calls. And that's because we dispatch for the whole region. Flagstaff PD does. So when you look at the second largest geographical county and sheriff's office in this country, we're dispatching for the sheriff's office. When you look at we're at 5 currently, with many more wanting to onboard. We even had a recent conversation with the Navajo Nation Fire Department. Those other fire districts in our surrounding our community, we dispatch for them. And then one of our greatest partners is Flagstaff Fire Department. And we dispatch all their calls for service. So that's that overall bundle there. Another thing that I think we should all be very proud of as being ahead of the game and very progressive in a lot of ways is we deflected over 400 calls for service right at the center and didn't dispatch a police officer like we traditionally would have, and sent that to a behavioral health specialist that then dispatched a crisis team. When those calls don't involve public safety or victimization and are purely behavioral health, we shouldn't be there. I want to preface that with what I said before. Public safety, victimization. And this is not the best instrument in a behavioral health crisis at times. So very proud of that number. What's also important is having this game plan, but you got to have a coach on the field. And so Solari we provide a console in the comms room for a professional counselor to sit there and help the staff choose which calls are best. The dispatchers have gone through CIT training to understand that, and we're going to continue to expand and work on that. We've improved our training and culture, as I spoke, and retention within the center. We did 8,108 hours of training and time logged within the center, and we revamped our onboarding and our orientation process, and that's been fruitful on a lot of levels. Our Priority 1 dispatch time is just under a minute. And I talk about our world-class response times in this community. So that's the time it takes to get the call out and then get us on scene is another bucket of minutes. I want to be cautious because as we have a need, and we're getting it through the new RMS and CAD, for better systems to understand and then extract data, we think we're between a 3.5 and 5 minute Priority 1 response time, but I don't want to give you an exact number because there's fluctuations based on the current system that we have. And then 88% of the fire calls dispatched within 60 seconds. I bet you're wondering what you're looking at in this slide. What you're looking at is a drug incinerator. So some of the things community and all of us don't think about at times is what do you do with all those drugs that you impound for destruction, or sometimes you hold for court cases and then you have to get rid of. Well, there it is. And we don't own this as a city. This is in a partnership with the DEA and the state where we're able to literally take hundreds and hundreds of pounds of all types of illegal drugs and then multiple times a year have an incineration process. Within the support services section, think about that as being the nervous system of a police department. Our records division or section was recently reorganized to improve our service and efficiency. They processed and disseminated just a little over 9,000 police reports. I'm so proud of the work we do with public records requests in our city. T Flagstaff is great. A lot of cities are really backlogged with this and challenged by this. We're up to date in how we get our public records out to our communities. 288 of those are body-worn camera video requests. Managing that data is another thing people don't think about. We will, on average, in a day, download 300 body-worn camera videos that have to be redacted, processed, categorized, tagged, and get ready for future prosecution. We checked this morning, in the last 24 hours, we downloaded 406. So the ebb and flow of that data and that volume is significant. We made improvements to our evidence unit and our retention policy updates with our 15 policy updates over the year. We do have a need in the future for an evidence supervisor. There's 2 clerks that are working all that evidence, and that's a challenge at times. We had 6,809 items of evidence received, destroying 4,700 and releasing 709. That's a lot of work throughout the course of a year. Property control enhancements we made to how we manage our property. I think you see in the state currently a police department under some scrutiny on how they're managing evidence and property, so it's really important that we have the best systems to manage that from a legitimacy perspective. And that is connected to how we dispense our fleet and our security. This last bullet point's really important. One of the most important things we do is understand our workload. So I was grateful for last year's budget to be able to have some money to reach out to a company I had used in my other city, and PFM. We put them on board. It's a group of world-class retired big city police chiefs, academics, and mathematicians. And they've produced a report for us measuring everything we do in the police department and the amount of work volume. And part of that has been in some other conversations related to ballot measure as we move forward with what we need. And I want to preface, what PFM gave us in this assessment of our capital, our staffing, and our fleet is a real-time snapshot baseline for today. So even with us projecting future city growth, but I look forward to sharing more of that with you. It's a very impactful workload assessment, and it's available to you anytime you need it. In this study, ironically, the busiest unit we have in the Flagstaff Police Department is our 2 animal control officers. And here you see one of them just doing great work. I'm so proud that we're able to expand that a little bit into this new year with a supervisor. So our 2 animal control officers will have a supervisor, and it affords growth. Imagine being in a position where you don't have the ability to take another step in supervision. They did receive 100% national level 1 certification. For the first time in this department's history, we have a full certification in this. We did get them tranquilizer certified. And you're asked, what is that? Sometimes I asked what it was. But at the end of the day, I think historically you've seen animal control officers with snares and nets. Very dangerous, not safe, super traumatic for the animal control officer, the animal owner, and the animal. This is a modern way of using tranquilizers to bring calmness to that sometimes chaotic situation. We responded with these 2 animal control officers to 2,500 calls for service. They authored 388 reports, wrote 29 citations, and impounded 417 animals, to include geese and all kinds of interesting animals. And so we love this mission and looking forward to its growth. The other thing that's so important nowadays in modern policing, and I think we've lived this recently in our Sentinel incident on February 4th involving the helicopter crash and that 2-hour gun battle with that suspect, is how we manage and communicate with media to our community first and foremost, and then with our media organizations and everybody. I'm very proud of the work we've done. We've been able to establish the creation of this media room that you see Jerry standing in, so we can produce our own content. I think the mayor, you've been in this room, and we've produced some content. But it's really important that a police department in 2026 have this capability to communicate at this level. We did 1,200 social media posts. We have an internship program with NAU where we get young, fresh minds that are more creative than old police chiefs and sergeants working in media to be able to help us create content. If you ever want to have a conversation about content, we're here. It's everybody's media room in a lot of ways, and we look forward to collaboration. We produced 129 media news releases last year, and that's pretty significant considering we don't have a television station here, and we've got newspapers and some radio, and so that's a lot of work. We attended 85 plus community relation events with over 55,000 in attendance. And one thing I want to say, I think that's really important in this conversation, is this is a small example, and it's across the whole department, where we have a lot of our missions that are collateral in nature. This is your PIO sergeant, who also is doing all the community engagement stuff while managing all of this. We have SWAT team members that are also detectives and patrol officers. I have an IA officer, detective doing internal investigations, holding us accountable, who's also my bomb squad guy who also teaches at the academy. There's beauty in being a generalist, but there has to be a point where we don't get that to a tipping point. The other thing I want to say on this is I've had some recent conversations with community post the pandemic. We had to go into this mode aggressively in a lot of ways to keep communication in our communities. And I think there's a lot of desire in this community, and we want to work with community to getting to some of the old school ways of having block watches. More of those, besides just the neighborhood meetings we go to, really dedicated. So a goal of ours that we want to do is with those communities that want to establish vibrant block watches and do some of that, we want to get back in that business moving forward. Again, tied to community engagement, tomorrow we're graduating another Citizens Academy, Police Academy. I think some of you have been in that. And if you haven't, I ask you to come join us in the next one and pull back the curtain. I've always said that if every community member in Flagstaff or in America were to spend a little more time in a police car, maybe on some ride-alongs, or do this experience, we'd all have a different philosophy in public safety and how we do things in public safety. But we had 2 successful academies. They're full. This room is full with 40-plus members. And what I really like, a lot of the academies around the state, you see a lot of our seniors. And we love that, and that's very powerful. But what we've seen is a trend lately for a lot of youth, a lot of young people in our academies, which I think is really important. We did 1,100 volunteer hours through our volunteer program. We did 1,350 internship hours and 300 reserve hours. And we have a reserve program. If there's anybody that wants to be a sworn police officer, but do it on a reserve part-time basis, we have a pathway for you to be a reserve officer in this police department. I made a promise to establish police chiefs advisory boards upon my arrival here. We've had great work with the Indigenous Advisory Board, and I appreciate Shannon coming to the last one. That was a 3-hour meeting with a lot of conversation about immigration, but really being able to put community in a room and have really deep, safe space conversations about what's going on straight to me is very impactful. And so we've met all our quarterly meetings for Indigenous and Crossability Advisory Board. You ask, what is crossability? Those are representations of our community related to ADA issues. And so they're very organized, I think, as many of you know, and they want to get together a lot and have conversations about that. I worked on an LGBTQ plus advisory board. There were some challenges. There's always community within community. And I want to stay committed to doing that, but there were some really significant disagreements, to be completely honest, and that's not my role in that. And so I will continue to reach out and work collectively with Pride or the Queer Collective, however we need to do that in some different silos. And then the Hispanic Advisory Board is coming. There's been a lot. We've had to navigate a lot as a community related to the impact on our Hispanic community, and there's been a lot of conversations, and I'm really looking forward to them getting together and galvanizing. The work we did in reforming the immigration policy is an example of when we can sit down together, and that'll be accomplished by the end of the year. That's my promise to you. Hiring and recruitment, 44 new hires, 17 sworn, 27 professional staff. Between both sections there, that's a 10% vacancy, and I'll talk a little bit how we're running at 95% staffing in both of those sections, which is really, really good. We have a video. Can you hear it? Okay. This is just giving you a little snapshot of some of the stuff we do through the hiring process in our assessments of our some of the physical things that we do out at the academy. Again, the collateral aspect, you see a lot of people helping out with this assessment that have other missions in the police department. We don't have just a solely independent unit. We have to cross-pollinate on a lot of that. So we had a reorganization of our recruitment and public relations team, bringing some symmetry to that. I was able to figure out getting 3 dedicated officers. One of the most important things we do is continue to feed new life into this police department. So having a dedicated recruitment team is vital to a police department, and they've done great work. We processed 244 sworn applications and received 233 passing with 17 hired. I'm so proud of the work that Colin and some others did in establishing High Country Training Academy up here, having control of our own academy through a partnership with the college is solid. Not having to ship our recruits down, it's costly, it's impactful on personal lives to either Prescott or Phoenix is great. We had 5 to 10 recruitment events that we facilitated. I talked about those lateral hires. They're really important. I think we have 2 more in the queue. I love out-of-state laterals more than in-state. If I don't know if Rick Tatter's here, but if you do an in-state lateral, you got to pick up the pension burden. And so, but we'll take them all. Having an officer that's already been trained that has experience, being able to run them through a shorter academy and get them out on the street is really good. And then 38 separations throughout the year. You know, this department's, from a sworn perspective, has averaged 20 to 30 separations or people leaving. This is overall in the department. I think we ran 6 on the sworn side. So here's our current breakout. We're running a 95.9% full rate within the sworn side of the house with 116 and 5 vacancies. We have those 5 vacancies on the board currently ready for the next academy as we move forward. It takes a year. It takes a year, and there's a lot that happens in that year, so it's a dynamic process where you have to have some flexibility. I appreciate HR and Shannon giving us a little bit of extra room to where you have to hire a couple over just in case, because you lose in the academy and the OIT process. Investigations is fully staffed with our current number, not fully staffed with our PFM recommendation. Academy, we have 5 recruits currently progressing very well. What's so important, and we've seen some other agencies that we partner with, doing the upstream work in your background investigations, your psychologicals, and really focusing on people that have roots here in this community creates stickiness in your academy. We've watched a couple agencies probably not doing the best on that, and those recruits are gone within 3 or 4 weeks at the academy, and we don't want to waste that investment. We have a testing in May, at the end of May, and one at the beginning of June. I talked about those 5 already being in background with those 2 conditionals on the board. And we always have to be cognizant of impending departures. We have retirements, personal lives, family situations that come up constantly that we're constantly keeping our eye on. Within the professional side, we're at a 90% full staffing with 6 vacancies. Administrative specialist, police records, customer service representative, police aide, police emergency communication specialist make up 3 of those. We'll constantly be working on that. And then 1 police emergency communication specialist is in background. One of the most important things, and you saw Shannon do this at the beginning of this meeting, is slow down a little bit in our busy lives and create recognition. I had a beautiful commendation come in. I think, Mayor, you were CC'd on it today from a community related to a death of a church member at one of our churches here in town, and then how the police department and the fire department handled that family afterwards. That's what keeps me going around here, watching that kind of feedback on that. So how we honor and recognize the work, because sometimes we get so busy we don't see it. That Metro Narcotics Unit has got the Group of the Year award in the whole state related to their narcotics work. Officer Simmons is our Exchange Officer of the Year, and we're going to be doing a promotion ceremony at the beginning of June. We kind of like to stack them all together to include Ryan's, and then we're going to do an award ceremony here in Chambers, and we'll make sure it's the beginning of June. We'll give you enough time to manage your schedules. The Lindstrom Leader of the Year award is going to Lieutenant Beckman. The VFW Officer of the Year award is going to Corporal Medley, and then our 2025 FPD awards we'll have an Officer of the Year, an Investigator of the Year, a Professional Staff of the Year, and then our Val Hernandez Excellence Award. We're keeping those a little hidden for surprises on the end. Technology and innovation. You heard us talk about how important having modern systems. I know you see a lot of contracts sometimes that come through. Those are important. We're not gluttonous with the types of technology and software, and we are in the middle of a CAD RMS implementation. I want to thank for our crime report, for our performance dashboard, for this process, being able to have the funding to do this, and then IT's work on this. It's truly a Team Flagstaff effort to implement such a big RMS, and I'm really looking forward to the modern platform as we move into some new eras. The Peregrine platform for implementation is the ability within our own existing data to really operationalize and data aggregate at a high level and really put us on tasks and create community dashboards and really visually see in almost real time what's going on with all the existing data that's in our different databases. I talked about those real-time dashboards. I'm also conducive to sitting down with each one of you. Should you want to see something in a dashboard, especially if we get to a place with the new RMS of some community-facing things that are important for you to help communicate with your constituents. We're going to see some enhanced digital forensic capabilities. This business is ever evolving. If you would have told me 30 years ago the ways in which we processed evidence forensically to where we are today, total game changer. And we have to, from a legitimacy, there's an expectation in courts nowadays that you have to have this. If you don't have it, you're not going to be able to move cases through courts. And then the introduction of AI-assisted report writing. We've turned this on through our body-worn cameras. Not only do they translate 55 different languages for our officers to be able to speak different languages if we come into that contact, but in real time they are transcribing what is going on in the video and then producing a police report. Incredibly impactful. We spend a significant amount of money after our shifts because all we're doing is going from call to call to call to then on the back end write reports, and a lot of times that's on overtime. In our pilot project with this, we saw what was taking 3 to 4 hours at the back end of shifts being reduced to 30 minutes. And I think as they move forward, we should get to a place, and we'll put some pressure on ourselves to where with this AI report writing, you should be able to get that done at the end of shift, before the end of shift. And I love seeing how our police officers write like Ivy League grammar students. That's a joke. But it's very, very professional and very well done on a whole host of levels with our report writing. Fleet and equipment, vehicle replacements. We added 4 hybrid police interceptors and 2 online and 2 pending builds. So we are sensitive to how we want to be sensitive to our environment and our climate. There are some harsh realities about our business. A lot of the vehicles nowadays are gassed up, and then their officers are waiting for more vehicles when the shift ends. And part of that workload assessment is having an expansion of the fleet until we get to a place of some rapid charging. Almost instantly, we're having twice as many electric vehicles, which is costly. We're in a place of hybrid being very impactful for now, moving forward. We did some really important branding, I think, when we talk about messaging in our building, in our culture. And we did these wall wraps throughout the building, whether it's records or briefing room, or this is kind of, being a U of A grad, it's hard for me to say, but like a Tillman tunnel going out of the ASU football stadium. Every day our officers see our most important words and visuals as they hit the street and go serve the community every day. The other thing is these digital messaging boards. Roger manages a lot of this in addition, but throughout the building, we are constantly messaging through repetition the things we want our officers to hear and see visually and read visually to reinforce what we're trying to accomplish. And we have a gratitude board that we've established, which is really cool. I'm really impressed with the things that get any officer, any member of the department can walk by it and write a message of gratitude. We open up our command stand meetings with gratitude as we start our meetings. That's part of the struggle well process, and we'll talk a little bit about our wellness approach on that. And then we have in the works, we're in the early design phases of a north expansion to provide some more modern, this is an older building, and some of our most expensive equipment is outdoors or not in properly stored facilities currently. Wellness and resilience, you saw an example of it today. This is a picture with the mayor and representatives from Arizona Complete Health. We were able to get this donation for Bear. Bear has been bred specifically for this mission. And so we're grateful. We're grateful for Arizona Complete Health and the ability to put this as one additional piece in our wellness component. We also expanded our wellness programming and our peer support. I think peer support program is very important. So we have a very dedicated group of our own members that are peer support, and I watched firsthand that night, and a lot of us worked 40 straight hours in that building post that incident. These peer support were on front stage working on our wellness. I'm happy to report post that incident, having 50 officers being exposed to that trauma, an additional run up to a burning helicopter with members of another law enforcement agency inside of it. As we sit here today, everybody's coming back to work except one. And so that in a lot of levels is very impressive, because a lot of times after these sentinel incidents, there's fragility in our trauma. And so I'm proud of that. The other thing that we see, and I thank the council and everybody's work, and the fire department's work has been instrumental in redemption counseling. We now have a brick and mortar facility in this community, and I don't pass an officer daily that isn't accessing that. We have 26 visits a week for the whole department and their families, should they need to go engage in this first responder specific therapy. I think when I looked at the data between the fire department and the police department, just about 1,006 sessions last year. So it's getting used. And then Struggle Well, we just wrapped up our 6th class. We're gonna have another class in August and another class in November. And this is out of the Boulder Crest Foundation, a veterans group that tries to convert the mindset of you're broken with a disorder, with PTSD, and what you have is post-traumatic growth. And really focusing, and the feedback's been powerful. That week-long session has changed lives in this police department, this fire department moving forward, and having that approach. I'm wearing my Struggle Well pin. It's in our building. We're all gonna struggle well together and grow through these traumatic incidents, and we'll continue to integrate that. With that, I know that was a lot. You're looking at one of our newer hybrid police vehicles. We went to all white instead of the black and whites. There's a number of reasons from a cost perspective. Upfitting vehicles post the pandemic has been hard, so making some concessions on some of that, but I'll take questions.
So is that photo, was it scaled correctly, or?
It looks a little blocky.
It does. It does.
Yeah, it's probably got a little bit of warp to it, but
All right, Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you again, Chief. This has been a wonderful presentation. I think some of the comments that I have first, before going into just a couple of questions for you, is one of the things that I really appreciate in your approach and the department's overall approach is you talk about the victim-centric police department. What I see, and I think what the community sees, is a community-centric police department. And that focus on engaging the community in really meaningful and tangible ways, being accessible, being transparent, and really partnering with the community as part of you being part of the community, not them being part of a department or seen as just engaging with you if they are the victim of a crime, but actually being able to partner and engage with you in other ways. I did make a note that the animal control slide picture did kind of make it look like the 2 officers you have are dogs, which I thought was wonderful. But I think overall, just the amount of attention that you all are paying to not only the community as a whole and the needs of the community, but also recognizing our officers, our dispatchers, everyone who works within the department as part of that community as well, is, I think, a really important shift that we've seen over time with the department, and really meaningful shift because it's again, reinforcing that partnership and that sense of belonging and inclusion and really being part of community, not just overseeing a community or community efforts. I wanted to dive into some of the stats that you shared earlier. In terms of the Narcan saves in particular, what training or is that part of an overall program that the department has in terms of harm reduction or risk reduction, whatever terminology needs to be used now, that the department is undertaking, or how is that service or that support kind of expanding within the department?
Yeah, Council Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council Member House, I appreciate that. And to your first statements, it means a lot to us to hear you say that. This is our community too. We're community members here. Policing isn't something we do to community, we do it with community, so I thank you for that. You know, this conversation, the evolution of Narcan in law enforcement has been interesting. You know, because a lot of these services were initially done by fire departments. And then what happened, sometimes out of unintended consequences and horrible things in communities, great things happen. And what we saw was a need for just significant real-time, our officers rolling up on overdoses and having to dispatch a fire crew from a fire station and being able to deliver that. So a lot of this initially, and I think, and correct me, Allison, we were able to get Narcan through state funding. And through a lot of state initiatives, the state at the state level said, just get it out and get it to police departments. And everybody reacted to how to operationalize that within departments. And now it's just been sustainable. And so I think, being able to put that tool on their belt, additional tools, we have a lot of other saves with tourniquets, chest seals, other things for gunshots and stabbing, because we're there on that scene a lot of times and just having to deal with it in real time. As it relates to an overall trauma-informed approach, I think what this is a realization by us in law enforcement that a lot of the solutions for these types of incidents involve a non-traditional approach. If you would have told me that officers were delivering Narcan through a nasal spray and saving lives frequently in a community, years ago I would have said, I don't know what you're talking about. And so I think there's advancement for us to continue to make sure that we're using this. It is a way of life in this police department now. So as part of that, we have medics, EMTs on the department now too as we move forward. So that's kind of how it was spawned. It was a response to an overdose crisis in this state, in this country, to be completely honest, and then galvanizing with state resources to be able to. And I don't think we have a shortage, and our ability to access it is vibrant. So I think we're only going to continue to operationalize it.
Thank you. And actually, part of what you said kind of anticipated my second question and last question, which was about, you mentioned the overall trauma-informed approach that you're taking. What I was going to ask is if you've seen kind of a shift in the operationalizing of the department or the way that you're approaching things, just because so many of the numbers and statistics and support that you've been offering over the past year has been kind of in that not only behavioral health realm, but also, like you mentioned, having EMT support and call deflections to Solari, the train-related fatalities, which are often associated with either substance use or intoxication or behavioral health. So are you seeing kind of a shift in how you're operating from that, with that in mind, or with that as part of your perspective of that need for that trauma-informed approach or that kind of community-centric?
Yeah. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilmember House, you've heard me say this multiple times, I think in front of you. The solutions for this police department will not be created with ways of thinking of the past. And that is transcendent for the whole profession. And I think what we saw from a trauma-informed approach, I think there was work being done. I know there was work being done in this police department prior to my arrival and prior to 2020 with this mindset. But, tipping points in society. Post Rodney King, I hit the street in South Phoenix, and we learned. Ferguson, we learned. And shame on us if we don't. And then post the pandemic in Floyd, tragic, right? We have to take an approach, and I think there's been an epiphany in policing, that if you do not take an approach of understanding the totality of community trauma blended with officer trauma, and where those two things meet, you have incidents like I just talked about. So I'm proud this department was and cognizant of this approach prior to my arrival, and we've just continued, whether it's through our academy curriculum, and a lot of this has to come from, outside the police department. I've said this, if I ask you what is an emergency, and you're going to dial 911, you all give me a different answer. It's an archaic way of connecting with community in this modern era. And I think as we move forward, everybody calls 911 for things. That's the reality. And so we talk about call reduction strategies, especially rooted in behavioral health and wellness, where we need to continue to do more work in this community. And it's going on. I'm proud of what's going on from a healing center or a sobriety center, more beds related to behavioral health. But having alternatives to incarceration with a trauma-informed approach, understanding acute childhood experiences in our juvenile population is not a luxury anymore in policing. It's a mandate, and we have to do that in partnership with things sometimes outside the city, because we only have so much capability, and with other NGOs and things like that. So I think it's going to continue to evolve. We have to have agility, because the dynamics of community will constantly change. We've lived that in the last few months with immigration, have we not? Related to how agile we all must be to manage that. So I think there's no finish line in this business. There's no fourth quarter, no shot clock. We've talked about that. No ninth inning. And so continuing to work on that trauma-informed approach and bringing additional partners in. And the best example for me is the deflection program, where we don't even go. It's not our business. Get the right service provider there on those scenes and get us out of that business. Appreciate that. Hopefully I answered your question.
You did. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Aslan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much, Chief. This is a great report. There's a lot to be extremely proud of here, and I'll wrap back around on that comment at the end here. Couple comments, couple questions, mostly just some observations that I invite you to riff off of as we go through this. Chief, I think you're a real gift to this organization, to this city. I really appreciate you coming up from Phoenix, coming down up from Phoenix to be here with us. You know, you're a systems thinker. You're very strategically focused. You're community oriented. It's clear that you're a trend observer and an early adopter of technologies, which we've had some tension around, but you are always welcome to explore new technologies and test those boundaries and figure out where we're at. And as an early adopter of tech myself, I tend to be fairly gung-ho about trying new things out. You know, you mentioned agility. You're very nimble and you're very responsive to us. Thank you very much. And, you know, just a couple days ago, several of us attended Deputy Chief Hernandez's retirement party. That's where I got my sunflower seeds from that I'm chewing on right now. And I just wanted to give a moment for that too. We had some anniversaries addressed today. That retirement is huge. Chewy's gonna be missed. He's so community focused and oriented. I really hope that whoever is tasked with filling those shoes is able to do at least that much. And I know that's part of your mission as well. So a couple things that I noticed on this. All top 5 intersections that you mentioned include Milton or 66. These are ADOT right-of-ways. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that. I'm sure our Metro Plan Director is aware of this pattern. And I'm interested in following up with Kate Morley to find out more about, you know, what her latest thinking is on all that. But if you have any reaction to that or the specific thoughts you want to share, I'll pause here and let you give those. If not, I'll keep going.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilman Aslan, I do appreciate your attention to detail on that. It doesn't go unnoticed by us. And I think watching the Metro Safety Plan group starting to work and really having a voice and looking at things, knowing Paul Mood is committed to engineering and then us working from a position of influence. At the end of the day, I don't see DPS or ADOT coming to take those collisions and do that work. And so I think that's where it's incredibly important to have this data to be able to demonstrate and tell a story. And then ensure, I think one of the greatest things we can do as a community is ensure that our signals are frequently cadenced properly with whatever the flow is. That's not a consistent. There's ebbs and flows, and having a vibrant traffic management system that is modern and technologically rich is important in real time to be able to manage those flows, and investing in that takes a lot of load off officers having to respond out and take collisions. So I think working collaboratively with ADOT, painting a picture of what's going on there, and then a lot of times letting us get out of the way and letting engineers really look at what's there that's working well from a signal perspective, a lane perspective, and a flow of vehicle perspective, and then us providing some feedback is the most important tack, and I think it's being taken. I will say this, in my experience with an incredibly vibrant traffic management system and center, where we as police officers thought we had the most dangerous intersections, didn't align with some of the information in some of those other traffic management units. In fact, they were seeing not the wrecks, but the potential for wrecks occurring in different intersections. So I think when you put all those together, making sure that we are looking as dynamically as possible, as frequently as possible, what those shifts in traffic flows are with what systems are in place, and then being able to pivot if we need to. I'm a firm believer, Vice Mayor, we've had this conversation about the role of environment in policing, and making sure that we modify environment upstream as a proactive way to prevent harm to our community and public safety.
Yeah, and just for those who aren't attuned to what I was glossing over there is, those roads are ADOT controlled. They're not controlled by the municipality or the city of Flagstaff, so it requires an extra level of partnership and cooperation to get things done there. And Kate Morley, the director of Metro Plan, is well positioned to be sort of that bridge person. So those follow-ups are always going on, and those conversations happen on a monthly basis. I just want to put a different light on some of the data you gave us. I pulled out my calculator and did some division by 365. I think it's really interesting. So what you're saying is that the department gets 200 calls for service each day.
Roughly.
I just want to put these in daily numbers because I think they're incredibly impressive and tell quite a story. You guys file 45 reports every day. 7 animal control calls for service every day. And you dispatch 497 calls every day. That's an incredible load. Just wanted to put those numbers out there because I think they tell a much more condensed picture of exactly what you guys are up to all the time, which is helpful for our narrative around trying to get a bond passed. Can you go back to the Criminal Investigations Division slide?
Council member, yeah, before we launch off of that, I think there's some other, Mayor, if I may, I really like where your mindset is on that. But don't look at it monolith. I'm like you a lot of times. I want to put things in an average and a median and have it. But what we also need to understand is a lot of those calls for service require 4 or 5 officers. So think about where that goes operationally, and how there's an ebb and flow of that number. It's not consistent. And so when you're resource allocating and you're going to hold me accountable for having the right number of officers and not being in a state of preparedness. I talk about at times within the staffing model, and the fire department talks about this, I'm a 1 or 2 incident police department. I get a fatality accident on the east side, and I need to control 4 lanes of traffic, get investigators out there and lock down 4 patrol officers on a 6-officer squad, and then there's a domestic violence in another neighborhood and another accident, there's nobody to go. And so I think that's the conversation of being in that heightened state of preparedness. So thank you for that look into that data. That's really important.
Fair enough, and definitely that ebb and flow is just, a statistical model, but it gives us a lot of information and it tells quite a story. If you could go back to that other slide, in terms of storytelling,
Yeah, we'll get you back.
there was a picture on there of some officers wading through deep water in a tunnel. And I was curious what the story is behind that particular incident.
Yeah.
Be brief, of course, but
Mayor and Vice Mayor and council member, I need to do a better job of when I do presentations of slowing down and discussing the visuals. In fact, I was on a patrol ride-along recently, and we did exactly this. There are tunnels underneath 66 in Milton and over there by Country Club. in that area that can produce high volumes of victimization and crime. And they're dangerous, especially, and I know Colin and Ryan have a lot more experience here than I do, but in getting myself up to speed with some of the things that have gone on in these tunnels, they can be dangerous. And the last thing we want is people sleeping in them, especially if we know we have some sort of event coming. And I think Colin, there has been fatalities in these tunnels related to some of the stuff that's gone on. So that's what you're looking at officers patrolling that. Those are plainclothes officers, so they might be looking for some evidence in those tunnels that run under our major thoroughfares. What you're looking at in the other picture is the Metro Narcotics work on a drug load we got, and then below that, you're looking at a crime scene with evidence placards.
Great, thank you. I was just really curious about that. I had to ask about it. A couple more just quirky little thoughts. I love the new patch. I think it's great you guys are able to create your own culture internally and come up with something so cool. Is that the moon or is that Pluto? I'm going to choose for it to be Pluto personally, but
Council member, vice mayor, council member, it can be whatever you want. I think
enough.
what the officers were talking about in their work sessions and developing with this is honoring dark skies.
Of course.
Honoring our flag and our staff. And then creating some additional legacy symbolism with what you see behind you. And so that's the blending of all of this. But I don't know exactly. Yeah, I think it's we be whatever you want. Okay, that's what it is, per the mayor.
I had an effort to get our logo changed recently. It didn't work out as well as yours did. I'm glad for your success story there internally. So kind of want to end with just mentioning how this report isn't coming to us in a vacuum. Of course, you're going to give this to us on a regular basis. But this year we have a bond that we're trying to move forward on. I don't want to do any campaigning for that from the dais here. I just want to mention again that I think a lot of the data here, a lot of the density of the data on a daily basis is very impressive. And, people like to back a winning horse. I think the narrative for this bond definitely needs to be on the line of we're full throttle, we're working hard for this community, we're keeping everybody safe, we're busy, busy, busy. And we could really use some additional resources to be even more effective as the narrative for that. I'll kind of leave it at that at this point. And then lastly, I just wanted to welcome Mary out here. This is the first chance I've had to talk today. I see a new face there. I couldn't really just not acknowledge that. Welcome to the team and looking forward to getting to know you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I've got a couple of comments and a couple of questions. I just want to thank you for what you do for our community, and I've had a lot of personal interactions with you and your team due to owning a business downtown, et cetera. But what I really appreciate is your willingness to get out there. You're not behind a desk, you are out there, Chief, and I think that really is important, and I think this community is really noticed, and I hear the comment all the time. So I just want to thank you for that, and to everyone else who is supporting you. I helped with Mobile Haven and their neighborhood group, and recently my own neighborhood was having an increase in some theft and crime, and we are forming I don't know if we're doing an official block watch, but we did host a neighborhood meeting, and your officers came and helped, and they talked to, I think it was a packed room, and I just, not every community is lucky enough to have a police force that is willing to do that. So again, I have worked with you on different projects, and they hit home for me, and from my seat, I see that you guys are very, very community minded, and it's noticed.
Vice Mayor, I appreciate that, and I want to be clear. I'm just a reflection as a leader of the followers, and we take a reflection mindset, and we have to lead by, if we have expectations of our officers to be those community engagers, we as a leadership team have to do the same. So I appreciate it, but I'm just proud to be a reflection of our members.
Thank you. And we all appreciate that. So I'm wondering, I have two questions. What additional support can we, and I guess I'm saying either the community or the city, can we contribute when you're facing high stress, burnout, the increasing demands that you all are facing? Is there something that comes to mind that we can help?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, I think we have an example, a tangible example that we all just lived February 4th, the night of February 4th, where I think all of you, majority of you, and then this leadership team in the city manager's office. I look back at Scott Overton in his building, and I look at a lot of others here who created a space for community to come. And I think that's where I could use your help the most in those sentinel critical incidents that occur, that have just significant traumatic influence to everybody. Using your relationship and constituent capital in those neighborhoods to help us engage at a higher level, and do the things that we did that following weekend to bring people together. I think that's one thing. I think the other thing that's really important is sometimes we can be byproducts of our systems in policing, and that's not always as healthy as it needs to be. And so continuing, and I feel like you all do this, is just continuing to be that aggressive advocate and voice for sometimes the things we don't hear or sense or see in our business, and afford us those perspectives. Our promise to you is that when we see opportunity for you to collaborate with us and enhance our service model, we will make sure we do that. And I think in a reciprocal relationship, if you see those things, I look at each one of you right now, and you've all brought things to my attention that I don't think I had an abundance of awareness on certain issues. So I think that's where that is. And then just from a relationship perspective, I told you there's communities within communities. If you have specific communities, culturally, relationship-wise, where you think you can add value to us, we're change conducive and be receptive to your input on some of that stuff. I hope that answered.
Thank you, that did.
Okay.
I have one last question, probably a curveball, but I'm looking ahead. What keeps you up at night from a public safety perspective? I really want to hear from you, Chief. What is it for you?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, the health and wellness of those officers that when the sun goes down, the rest of us go to bed and rely on them to be those guardians of our safety, and knowing that they're out there in the middle of the night while I'm sleeping. I think February 4th was a nightmare, and what keeps us all up, having to get up and go out and manage that and lead that. I think that's one thing that sticks in all of our minds. I think the other thing that keeps me up, you heard me talk about this being a 1 or 2 incident police department. I hold, and I know this team behind you and this whole department holds ourselves to such a high level of service. I think we worry a lot about our operational ability at times to make sure we do what we're sworn to do at the most modern, highest levels. And I do worry, and I lose my sleep at night sometimes about our staffing model, to be completely honest. The work that Colin and Ryan and Allison have done, and what this department has done historically, having collateral duties all over this place and getting the mission done at such a high level, I take a knee to that. And I think I lose some sleep over that. And then I think the last thing I lose sleep about is I recently adopted a puppy at a community event, and she stresses me out sometimes at night, making sure she's in her crate and not causing mayhem. That would be the third and the last thing. Good old Dolly.
Thank you for ending with the puppy story. Thank you, Chief, for everything.
Thank you, Vice
And again, your team is amazing, and I know how hard you work. So thank you.
Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, thank you for the presentation. I've said it on multiple occasions that maybe we do too good of a job of creating a sense of the Flagstaff is still a bedroom community, and people don't realize that we have crime here, and we have, some serious crime here. So it is important that don't want to scare people and make them afraid to go to bed at night, but at the same time realizing the reason why we have that sense of security and bedroom community is because of the work that our law enforcement does, and I really appreciate everybody. A few of my colleagues kind of touched on this, you've touched on this, but I just wanted to give it a little bit more space because it can be a little deceiving. When you talked about vacancy rates are really low, but in the same breath, you've said your officers go to call, to call, to call, to call, to call all day long. And that's got to be really stressful and facing burnout. Great that AI is going to assist in then the reporting afterwards, but still there's an 8-hour day that's just nonstop. And so I'm curious of that vacancy rate that you're talking about. Is that just what FTE approved at this point? Because it's not FTE needed to really do this job that our police officers need to do. Am I correct in that?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilmember Mathers is very insightful. There's a lot more complexity to that vacancy rate, yes. If you'll afford me the space, I'll give you a little more. And this is Collins Alley, and he's a ferocious advocate of, when we look at that number of 119 sworn that's been authorized for many, many years around here, that there is a dynamic in that. And that is, first, let's talk about the PFM staffing report, right? Where we talked about baseline needs. There's additional numbers in both the professional and the sworn side of that to get us to a healthier staffing model. So what we're currently operating, even if we're full staffing, is we're behind the A-ball on that, figuratively. The other part of that is what you don't see in that, because they're considered staffed, is at times this can be a contact sport. It's a physical job. And your office is a vehicle, and you're driving in a city 10 hours a day, and you're getting out physically and engaging in people. And we have light duty. It's a constant factor. We work really hard to keep our eye on the ball on our light duty and making sure, and I think you see in some of our vision moving forward, modern police departments have recharge rooms where they can partake in cold plunging and rehab and treat their bodies like a professional athlete to prevent where they're out for 4 weeks on a sprained ankle, because we have anywhere from 5 to 9 people at a time that are on some sort of military leave, light duty status, so that takes out of that pot. So I think those are all the different metrics that you can look at, but I think conceptually, knowing what our PFM study is saying for today into the future, and this number, that's why I think you see that 10% available time out of a 10-hour day, where we want to nationally be at about a 40-hour to really engage community and be proactive in our efforts.
Thank you. I really appreciate you clarifying that, because I didn't want the public or us up here on the dais to think, well, they don't really, they're pretty solid. That's a pretty solid vacancy rate. I mean, it's not a concerning rate, but it really is, because you really need much more than what your number of FTE approved today is. So
It's an older number.
yes, thank you.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your work, Chief. You and your staff have pulled up a great presentation, and I was trying to not say the word thank you, so good job, because everybody else already has. I want to just do what I normally do when we talk about these things and remind us where we're at in terms of historical relevance, going back to Chief Cooper when I first started putting my eyes on this thing, and the community policing properties that he kind of started to instill into the fray, and going through Treadway and Chief Musselman, and then I'll include you here in just a second. keeping profiling down to a minimum while, for the most part, addressing community or criminality through tangible enforcement methods. And then I wanted to mention that when you first came to the city of Flagstaff, my first interaction with you, it seemed like you had read their playbook thoroughly and then came up with some of your own methods. Our very first conversation, you mentioned community interaction and asked me, you hadn't been on staff very long, and you were asking, where do I need to go to talk to the community that needs my presence? So I really appreciate your forward thinking. I don't know if you were just on the same wavelength as they were as to treating Flagstaff as its own community when it comes to the type of policing that we desire here, when it comes to the enforcement. Because we do have different kinds of crimes here than we do in other places. And coming from Phoenix, you know, I didn't expect anything less than what we got, but there was a question. And you fit the shoes perfectly, and you hit the ground running. You've been here over a year now, and I wanted to start off by thanking you for that one. Now, when it comes to, can we go back to the slide where we have the shelters numbers on it, please? And the reason I wanted to bring up that slide was I just wanted to kind of nudge you a little bit and let you have an opportunity to think outside of the box while you're up there at the podium and see when we're looking at the total amount of calls. Show me what the total amount of calls was for that again, Chief.
For which location? Yeah, so when we talk about those three being our highest, when we look at 4185, it's about 1,600 calls for service over there at the shelter.
Per year?
Yeah, and remind you that Colin did a great job, and in a perfect staffing model, I'd love to have a dedicated team, just like we do for the downtown. A dedicated team that are highly trained with crisis intervention and de-escalation to manage and help Ross manage that population. He was able to put some things together with the King Squad. Did I say that right? Yeah, with one of the squads that went out there. And we saw, and I've talked to some patrol officers that saw great benefits from it. And I want to say this too, those 1,600 calls for service, the fire department's running another 1,300 calls. So when you look at the amount of service the city's providing to that mission, it's significant. It's vital. It's important. But that's almost 3,000 calls for service between your fire department and your police department.
Yeah, so I was looking at those numbers, and I had the same thing come right off the top of my head, and I'm sure a lot of people in here did too, and that was, when the time is right and we're able to fund the appropriate amount of officers for what we need, having something dedicated in that area seems like it would keep crime down just in general to have that constant presence, although I know that we can't do that now. I'm glad you're already thinking into that direction. Now, when you mentioned the King Street Squad, I wanted to kind of take this back to the Sunnyside neighborhood and the amount of help that you guys have provided there over the past 20 years, bringing criminality. I don't want to get into the specifics, but I'll be light on the numbers. From somewhere near 20% of the entire town's arrest rate and criminality down to less than per capita what we occupy as a community with over 8,000 people in that area and having somewhere around 7% or less of the crime. It's through those type of actions, the King Street Squad and some of the other things that we have allocated funding for, that you guys have really dropped the crime rate in that area to where I have never lived in a neighborhood where I felt more safe in this community. So thank you guys for that. Now, lastly, I wanted to mention with the recent retirement of Deputy Chief Charles Hernandez, who was a community and cultural asset, being a lifelong resident of Flagstaff, a Hispanic member of our community. I wanted to thank you for your movement in making a Hispanic advisory committee, and I wanted to ask you what steps are currently being taken to formulate that, and what is your goal?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilmember Garcia, thank you. I think the first and most important thing you do is you listen aggressively to the community. And so in partnership with Maria, Roxana, and then some members that we currently have on our Citizens Liaison Committee, letting them, I believe in lever pullers in community and influencers. And so my charge to them has been, let's do this together. You identify those influential lever pullers in your community. And we did this exact same thing with the indigenous community, and then we get together. But one of the things that's really important in the development, having stood up a lot of advisory boards, police chief advisory boards, is you have to afford grace in the community's ability to do this and partner with you. And so the energy that we share in it has to be mutual. And so those are the individuals that I've been having conversations with as they've been the most engaged with me on some levels. But I'm open if there are additional pockets of that community that want to be part of this. The second part of this is what is its mission? What are we trying to accomplish by gathering like this and connecting at a high level? And for me, and then hopefully for community, and I think if you were to pull some of the members of these current boards aside, they would say exactly this. It's being emotionally intelligent together in a safe space. Absent all the other distractions in life and community, where we can be self-assessing, self-correcting, and have the ability, most importantly, to, with an abundance of honesty, put each other's shoes on. And then collaboratively work together to identify, not be problem-focused, but solution-focused. And then it's another opportunity for them to inform me of helping me have a pulse on the neighborhoods and what's going on in those specific communities. And then the other part of it, it's an opportunity for me to inform them of the pulse of what's going on, sometimes things out of our control, and things within our control. We like to have quarterly meetings. I like them to put on one community event a year, and we're working towards that. But that, in a nutshell. The last thing I think, too, that's super important is we're on speed dial with each other. I create 2 chairs, and Rose, Dorothy, and Daryl in the indigenous community, and some others on the cross, they can call me 24/7, or any one of us, and put out a brush fire. And a lot of times, before those things get their own contagion energy on social media, I can give them the facts. In fact, Dorothy has done this multiple times with me about things that have come to her. And that relationship is reciprocal. At times, I will call them proactively and let them know about something, so they're armed with it before they read it in the news or they hear about it elsewhere.
Thank you, Chief, and I think that that's great context, and to mentioning the work that you did when you first came here with kind of codifying some of the police practices in the police practice handbook through those meetings, and actually identifying the changes that could be made from community input. That was huge for me, and it proved that even though you were preceded by many greats that set us in this direction, that you are definitely the next step in how to be a police chief here in Flagstaff for its community needs, and not just to be out there chasing down criminals blindly.
Well, and I think we need to honor them, council member. This team behind me has done that work, and they've been, and I think my forefathers were progressive in that Citizens Liaison Committee with Treadway and all of that. But the evolution of the concept is you're putting every special interest group of the whole community in one room and then asking them to all collaborate. And there is some beauty in that, but really then bifurcating that and really having a voice with each special group of interests, because the needs of the Hispanic community are different than the needs of the African American community at times, that are different than the needs of the indigenous community. And being able to narrow that focus, I think anytime you narrow it, you're better.
Thank you for your service, sir.
Councilmember Spence.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for this presentation. Like all my colleagues here on the dais, I am very proud of our Flagstaff Police Department, and your report just solidifies my support and backing for how you're operating. And you and your team, your officers, your professional staff are making excellent use of the budget that the city of Flagstaff provides to you. And we're all going to support a public safety bond measure if that goes to the ballot. But with all that said, I'm going to step away from the dais. I'm going to speak for just a moment for another 70,000 people in northern Arizona.
Councilmember Spence, you need to be on the microphone.
Even though I'm stepping away, I just want to give voice to another 70,000 people in northern Arizona that benefit from the services that you've described. And I was so impressed of the number of SWAT dispatches that occurred, how many of them were outside city limits. But your team apparently provided that SWAT team on short notice throughout northern Arizona. The support you're giving to the Firearms Training Center as a service to all of northern Arizona is really commendable. And the dispatch service that you operate, I'm so impressed. I'm sure the county sheriff appreciates, but I just want to give voice to the fact that while you're the City of Flagstaff Police Department, you're really a support agency for all of northern Arizona. So on behalf of another 70,000 people, I want to say thank you.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilmember Spence, I appreciate the passion with which you said that. And I think there's additional to that. One of the first things that struck me upon my arrival here, and everybody that sits behind me, is the level of collaboration exuded by this police department in what at times in this northern region can be a resource desert related to the needs of this entire region. What this is the icon police department of the northern Arizona region in supporting. It's not just the SWAT deployments. Ryan, when we had that tragic loss of that 8-year-old on the Navajo Nation, guess who was up there with investigators supporting that? Boom. I can go through story after story at all levels of this department supporting other missions around the northern region. So thank you for recognizing that. It's incredible.
We all thank you.
There are a couple of things that I want to bring up, and you mentioned something about the aftermath of the shootout and the helicopter crash, and I just wanted to thank both you and Deputy Chief C for being there for the community to help explain how the process is working and share food with them and bring in some crisis help. I think we had 5 therapy dogs there in the room, which I thought was great. But also for your outreach to all of the neighbors in that neighborhood in the intervening time. That was just handled so well as far as I could tell. And I just wanted to give voice to that. And community relations, my goal, my hope would be that we could hire enough officers where more of your officers have even more time to do that, because it is such a critical part of what you do. And the fact that you're able to do as much as you are with current staffing levels is pretty amazing. And I just love to see even more of it. And I would think that the officers would also appreciate it, you know, having some positive interactions with people in between what can, I'm sure, be some stressful interactions. Staff all staff, can we get these graduations on our calendars as soon as possible? So I know that we all want to attend them, and I would just love to see them on my calendar so that I can. And just another shout out for the performance dashboards. We're redoing the city website, and I have high hopes that it's going to be outstanding when it's done. And those dashboards, not just for law enforcement, but for all types of city services, are one of the things that I'm most excited about, so that the community can more easily access information about what the city's doing. So that's just another. And thank you. I just appreciate what you all do. I appreciate the time it took to put this together, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
All right, we are moving down to Girl Scout recognitions. So if everyone here for that would meet us down here at the edge of the dais, we will do some proclamations. So I'm going to read these, and then after I do, if one or more of you want to get up and say something, I mean, if the young women here would like to talk about their projects or whatever, and then we'll take a photo. Okay. Ms. Brink, is this you staying out of pictures? I'm just the videographer. Okay. All right. I think our Officer Bear has something to say too. The City of Flagstaff recognizes the dedication and perseverance needed to obtain the Bronze Award from the Girl Scouts of America. The City of Flagstaff recognizes the significant leadership and community services provided by such scouts as they become involved citizens. The City of Flagstaff commends Ava Washburn for obtaining the Bronze Award and recognizes her as a future leader. The City of Flagstaff recognizes the dedication and perseverance needed to obtain the Bronze Award from the Girl Scouts of America. The City of Flagstaff recognizes the significant leadership and community services provided by such scouts as they become involved citizens. The City of Flagstaff commends Violet Baca for obtaining the Bronze Award and recognizes her as a future leader. The City of Flagstaff recognizes the dedication and perseverance needed to obtain the Bronze Award from the Girl Scouts of America. The City of Flagstaff recognizes the significant leadership and community services provided by such scouts as they become involved citizens. The City of Flagstaff commends Allison Brink for obtaining the Bronze Award and recognizes her as a future leader. The City of Flagstaff recognizes the dedication and perseverance needed to obtain the I Live My Faith Award from the Girl Scouts of America. The City of Flagstaff recognizes the significant leadership and community services provided by such scouts as they become involved citizens. The City of Flagstaff commends Taylor Aldrich for obtaining the I Live My Faith Award and recognizes her as a future leader. All right, so I'll let you facilitate this.
Do you want to go first, Taylor? And just tell everyone what your service project was? Sure. Here. Tell them your name.
Hi, I'm Taylor, and for my project, I did the I Live My Faith Award, and what I had to do for it was really fun. And so I helped the community by I helped the community by making little goodie bags for the homeless people who didn't have anyone to really help them. And so I helped them by giving them food, I gave them socks, lip balm, and I gave them a lot of other things. Thank you.
Hi, our names are Violet and Ava, and for our Bronze Award project, we installed a deluxe little free library at the new downtown public bus station. This helped promote conserving water, and it also helped more people take the bus. It was really fun. Thank you.
My name is Allison, and for my Bronze Award project, I made, or not just me, but another Girl Scout that is sick right now. Her name is Kylie. And we made goodie baskets for dogs who are going to be put down because of illness, or dogs who are just getting out of surgery at the Humane Society.
Thank you all so much for being here. Congratulations. Yes, thank you. Good work. Okay, now we're down to item number 8, renewable energy credits for municipal operations.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Nicole Antonopoulos, Sustainability Director. That's a really hard act to follow. And then the therapy dog. So anyways, I am here this afternoon to discuss renewable energy credits with the council. We will be discussing the city's clean energy commitments, as well as how we are advancing those commitments and reviewing cost-effective options. So just a refresh, the city has a long commitment to clean energy, dating back several years. It started with direction from the former city council to become a 100% renewable energy municipal organization and community. Then the city formalized that commitment by its adoption of the 2017 Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, and then the 2020 Carbon Neutrality Plan. So how are we advancing our clean energy goals? We are doing this through efficiency and infrastructure upgrades. And I want to focus on energy efficiency as the most cost-effective and immediate way to reduce emissions, lower our operating costs, and extend the life of city infrastructure. We are upgrading lighting, HVAC systems, building controls, and water energy systems to reduce our overall demand across the organization and making every dollar we invest in clean energy stretch even further. These improvements create long-term savings and fiscal stability for the organization. The next area that we've been focusing on is renewable energy development. So pairing efficiencies pairing efficiency upgrades with on-site solar and other renewable installation ensures that we size our systems correctly and maximize the clean power that we do produce. Prioritizing renewable energy after efficiency measures ensures that the clean energy we generate is used as effectively as possible. So expanding renewable energy across city facilities helps reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and strengthens our local energy resilience. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in our presentation. And what we're here to talk about today is renewable energy credits. This is the third tool we have in our toolbox. These credits allow the city to balance its energy portfolio while transitioning more facilities to on-site renewable energy over time. They provide a flexible and verifiable way to support our renewable energy goals and accelerate project to our clean energy benchmarks. So combined with efficiencies and on-site renewable energy generation, renewable energy credits help the city maintain momentum towards getting our long-term goals achieved. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention future innovations. I think most of us know that there's a lot of advancements in technology, and we are keeping a pulse on that. So as technologies evolved, such as batteries and microgrids, demand response systems, and advanced building analytics, the city will continue adopting solutions and enhance resilience and reduce our emissions as well as create fiscal stability. I want to ensure that the council feels that they have a clear understanding of what renewable energy credits are. They're often referred to as RECs, so I will from this point forward refer to them as such. RECs are a market-based commodity that is basically a certificate that proves 1 unit of clean, renewable electricity was produced and added to the power grid. So for example, when a solar farm or a wind turbine generates electricity, it creates two things, the electricity itself and a renewable energy credit. Utilities and organizations can buy those RECs to show that they are supporting or using renewable energy, even if the actual electrons powering their buildings come from the mixed grid. So in short, a renewable energy credit, or REC, is like a receipt that says, clean energy was made on my behalf. Council, you've seen this slide before, but I wanted to provide it to offer a snapshot of our current portfolio. As you can see, our investments in clean energy are paying off and covering the cost of our current renewable energy credit purchases from APS. I have also included in your agenda packet the CCR that Danae Pressler drafted that provided an overall snapshot of the city's energy portfolio across the board, from natural gas expenditures, fuel from our fleet, as well as electricity. So one thing I do want to point out is we are currently spending just under $98,000 a year on renewable energy credits. And the lion's share is coming from water services and their consumption. I did make mention at the budget retreat last week that this is the renewable energy credits, which I said I would refer to as RECs. The RECs are being attributed based on electric consumption across the organization, which is why water services, for example, as we've discussed, which consumes the lion's share of electricity at the municipal level, is responsible for the majority of the RECs that we purchase. With municipal electricity use projected to increase, we continue to evaluate rec suppliers and look for the most cost-effective solutions. One thing that is really important as we discuss energy consumption over the long term is that it's incredibly variable. We know that precipitation, temperature, operations and water services, as well as new facilities being commissioned, will continue to send us on a trajectory of more consumption. This year alone is a historic winter. However, we do anticipate that we will continue to see winters like this if we refer to our climate profile. In identifying solutions, the Navajo Tribal Authority, also known as NTUA, offers a readily available economic option for the purchase of RECs. I'm here this afternoon with Anthony Cordoran from NTUA if you have any questions for him following the presentation. And this is Anthony over here. So NTUA's pricing is quite competitive and would yield nearly a $21,000 annual savings for the city organization over the current rates that we are paying with APS. And please note that there is a sales tax attributed to the NTUA pricing. I'll let you look at that for a sec. So I would be remiss if I did not paint this discussion in the larger picture. I don't want to bring forward recommendations without offering the broader landscape for the council. So in the short term, we would recommend transitioning to purchasing RECs through NTUA. And then within the next 6 to 9 months, we will evaluate and negotiate the Arizona Consortium for the Virtual Power Purchase Agreement. Council may recall that this is the effort being led by Northern Arizona University with a statewide coalition to potentially look at a virtual power purchase agreement for RECs. If the bids come in and they're economically viable, it will be roughly 12 to 18 months before the project would actually yield any RECs for the city. If this is not an economically viable option, we have discussed with NTUA the potential for continuing on purchasing RECs through them. And then within the next 12 to 14 months, the city is going to pursue additional on-site solar for city facilities, also looking at opportunities for battery storage, along with pricing stability and emergency response as our main drivers. So we will be back in front of council as we develop that framework and look at different financing mechanisms to continue on this trajectory of protecting the city's economic viability as well as our emergency response. So if we do move forward with the VPPA model, again, that will be in the next 12 to 18 months. But in the interim, it is our recommendation to move forward with NTUA and yield a significant cost savings. All right, that's all I have for the discussion, and happy to answer any questions or even bring up Anthony if you'd like to have a chat with him.
Step on up and let us meet you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me. So my life is actually somewhat bifurcated in that I actually live here in Flagstaff with my family and spend about half my time on the nation working for the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority. I come with 19 years of experience from the City of Mesa's Energy Resources Department to the NTUA. Started in November and have really enjoyed working for the organization. So when Nicole approached us, I was happy that those two sides of my life were able to sort of merge in something that works out not only for the Navajo Nation, but also for City of Flagstaff to save some money. But happy to answer any questions you have about how we view generating RECs and selling them, what we do at the NTUA. Happy to field any questions.
I have a question. What does the development look like at this point? How much have you developed? And yeah, I guess that's my main question, is how much you've developed it to this point.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe a decade ago, the NTUA realized that we had something of a unique ability to spin off a private entity and start developing renewable energy projects because municipalities and other tax exempt entities could not take advantage of the tax incentives that make renewable energy projects possible. And so since then, we built and commissioned our first utility scale solar project in 2019 in Kayenta, Arizona, so just south of Monument Valley. That was a 27 megawatt system. From there, we added on to that project in 2019 with Kayenta 2, another 27 megawatts. And then in 2023, we commissioned our largest facility, the Red Mesa project in Red Mesa, Utah, that was 72 megawatts. So those are our 3 currently operational plants that are generating renewable energy. What we're proposing for this transaction is utilizing our hydroelectric renewable energy credits for now. We are building more solar, so there may be an opportunity to work that in, but for now the most economical ones are the hydroelectric RECs. And the N2A is, I believe, and I'm still a little new, so I'm just trying to figure this out. I believe we're still the largest recipient of federal hydropower from the Colorado River Storage Project, which is Glen Canyon Dam, because we're able to not only receive benefits for the Navajo Nation, but we also have a benefit crediting agreement with, I think, 13 other tribes throughout Arizona who they don't operate their own electric utilities, so they're not able to receive the benefits of receiving hydroelectric power directly, but we accept their allocations and give them the benefit of it. So we're a very large recipient of hydroelectric RECs. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the renewable resources that we're working on. We are building another 25 megawatt plant here within the next year, as well as another 5 megawatt plant, and both of those will have our first battery resources actually. So we're moving towards batteries as well.
Thank you. That
Yeah.
brings up another question.
Okay.
So then how does the struggle over the Colorado River impact your plans?
Yeah, that's a very real question that I think that we're very concerned with. Some of the discussions we've had with the Western Area Power Administration and Bureau of Reclamation have caused some real concern over that. You know, it's one of those things that's kind of out of our hands. We will have to adapt like everybody else. To give you some context, we usually accept and expect 250,000 megawatt hours or 250,000 RECs every year. In 2025, I think that was down to 150,000. So it's low, and you know, snowpack was pretty awful this year as well. And with that snowpack, we're seeing lower and lower inflows as the snow melts. The ground, because it's drier, is now absorbing more of that runoff. So it's not even making it into the lakes. So we're very concerned with it. I think we have other options. We also have other hydropower allocations. And then those additional solar plants that are coming online, I think we have the ability to kind of meld all that together to make it happen. So yeah, we're concerned, but I think we have other ways to make it happen as well.
So there would be enough of a continuous supply if we were to purchase RECs from you?
Yes. Yeah, Mayor, Council, I do feel that that's true. Yeah, I think we've discussed about 38,000 renewable energy credits. So, you know, if we're expecting maybe 100 or 150,000 this year, I think there's room for us to work with there.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you. Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. This question is for Nicole. I just want to make sure that, I know you've presented this information before, and I appreciate you bringing it very timely up here again. So if you go back to maybe one of the slide that shows the savings. One more. Oh, right. So just so I'm clear on understanding, because of our solar and I think the Hoover Dam Authority, because of the savings there, the savings offsets the renewable energy credit that we are purchasing. So if we weren't purchasing energy credits, we would be just saving instead of offsetting. Is that correct? Okay, okay. I just wanted to understand that clearly. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I do want to bring your attention back to line 3, the City of Flagstaff-owned systems, and just make sure it's clear that in our annual operational savings, the $137,000 is current. When we pay off our loan in 2030, we'll see that cost savings increase. The number provided here at 176,000 was from our pro forma, which is, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to dig deep, 7 or 8 years old. So we can do some work to get some more actuals on the true cost savings with today's pricing. So I just want to make sure that we do have a static number in the projected savings after 2030.
And my last question is, does our strategy, our goals change with all the renewables, if that's what you call them, happening at Babbitt Ranch? I know they have quite a huge project going on there.
They don't. Thank you for asking though, but we're very excited for those to be coming online. And thank you, with your question, it actually raises a point that I'd like to ensure that the council is aware of. We, with our renewable energy systems that have been online, our first phase was initiated in 2011, which are the parking canopies here at City Hall. We also took a very strategic approach to focus on water services. So you'll see here with the Arizona Power Authority, all of those energy, that cheaper energy, is actually funneled directly into water services. So they have that price point reduction, if you will, of about $34,700 a year on average. As Anthony mentioned, we're going to start seeing more volatility in that. But we also firm up every quarter if there are some renewable energy credits for sale, we purchase those. So we are continuously trying and monitoring to bring on that cheaper electricity as fast as we can. But all of that benefits water services to help stabilize their expenditures. And then the largest systems in in line 3 and line 4 have been installed at water services, either at Wildcat or Rio de Flag wastewater treatment plant. So we've been very strategic on trying to stabilize cost at our largest using points. I did mention that we are now working on developing a framework to come forward for a next phase of solar and battery storage, wherein we're looking at every inch of possible land that we own at the city, as well as structural facilities that can actually host any roof mounts and so forth. So now we're really focusing on the whole organization, whereas in the past we were looking for those large projects that could really anchor our pricing.
So just to follow up on that, if we do continue to expand our solar panels and using that to power the city buildings and stuff, will it continue to then raise how much energy credits we purchase, or will we just start saving money?
So the renewable energy credits we purchase would actually go down. So we wouldn't need to buy as many, but with that in mind, depending on where we lock in for those renewable energy credits, now again, this is a market commodity, we may want to sell our credits because we could actually yield more to sell and purchase elsewhere. So we can get into the complexities, but it's a tradable commodity, if that makes sense. Yeah, but we're always looking out for the best interests and fiscal stability for the organization.
All right, council, are there any additional questions or comments? So will this be placed on an upcoming agenda for action? Or
Yes, it will.
okay,
Great,
thank you. Okay, all right.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so moving down to solid waste sustainability and management services community update.
Right. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Appreciate the time this afternoon. This is a presentation to follow up on our late January, early February conversation as it related to some service changes in solid waste. We're also going to hit on a few items here in future projection for our rate study, and then a couple of our communication pieces as we go through our conversation today. So my name is Sam Beckett. I serve as your solid waste section director. Today with me we have Cher with our sustainability division, and then we also have Justin Cuevas here, serves as our collections manager, is going to speak to some of the operational pieces. Again, the updates related to solid waste, and then we also have the update on sustainability. As we jump straight into it here, as most of you are all very aware from the previous work sessions you've had and the retreats, the solid waste program was moved up in our rate study, which we appreciate your decision to move us forward to really take a look at our whole program as we move into this new season of solid waste. What we've seen is it's not just one program that we're seeing an issue with or another. The fund itself was struggling across the board, and we just need to figure out how do we get that back to a better balance? How do we meet the community expectations of service? And then how do we balance that with the fees associated with those expectations? As we look into it, we've already started down the path. We have an internal working group between management services, sustainability, public works. Who else is sitting in there? It's a fairly large working group at this point. Our first and foremost goal is to bring in the proper consultant. That's really key as we go through these rate studies, is we bring in a third party to help evaluate our programs line item by line item to ensure, one, can we find a good balance in these programs? And then two, we bring in our expectations to the table to help balance out expectations and financial stability. So as we go through this today, at the end here, we'll have a point of Q&A. What I'd like to do is, if you have expectations or you're hearing community outcry for certain services, I'd love to hear that today rather than bring back a proposal and then address those issues. So the more feedback I can get early and often, the better we can come back with a good proposal. So we're currently in the process of scoping out the work product for our vendor. We have narrowed it down to 3 vendors, and we're working with our management services team to bring on a vendor appropriate for this. Again, all programs in review. I think there's been a misconception that one service over another has driven this to the point of where we are today. That would be inaccurate. I think as we've looked at this holistically, the fund itself was in a point of struggle. We brought on a new service, and then that was kind of the straw that broke that camel's back, if you will. And so we had to really stop and reevaluate everything at a much more rapid pace than we had expected to do. So as we go through this, again, it's a full fund evaluation from our landfill, our collection services, our administrative services, and then try and balance that out with those community expectations. A lot of this as we move forward is going to take a ton of feedback and buy-in from our community. We've had some conversations with the city of Phoenix, who has just wrapped up their rate study and were approved this last Tuesday to make some adjustments in their rates. And now you think, well, how does that relate to city of Flagstaff? Well, you'd be surprised on the service provided from that city municipality to our services provided. Now, size and scale is different, but service provision is very, very similar. So with the relationships that we have with them, we've been having some good conversations with that group to understand what are some of those service challenges that they saw. How did they continue to keep a very high level of service, yet try and balance that out with their current rate structure that was just recently adopted. So again, those conversations have been in the works. We're going to meet with them here in the coming weeks. But a big piece of what we have to do is get that community buy-in and engagement, truly understand what we're hearing and seeing from the public as a need for service. That's not just our residents. We do provide a lot of open market service, and that's something we have to try and figure out. How do we balance that out with our small businesses, with other municipal service providers in the region, whether it's NAU, Coconino County, things like that. key benchmarks are going to be really, really important as we talk through this here. We're going to have a series of community meetings as we get rolling into this process here. We will make sure that everybody's engaged in this process. You all will get all the invites to those meetings as well to ensure that not only we are hearing from the community in our interpretation, but it's really important that we get your interpretation of what you hear from the community. The more feedback, the better as we go through this. It helps us compile that data, and then obviously bringing on the right consultant to help us take that and put it into something meaningful, something that's consumable for all, and hopefully come out with a really good product at the end here. These are the list of the programs that will be evaluated as we go through it. So again, it's everything that solid waste provides as a service. All of our collection services, our landfill operations, and our capital programs are going to be really, really key. The one piece I don't specifically have listed in here because it's really encompassed in everything is our fleet. We have an aging fleet that's just far out exceeding our revenues to manage those fleets properly. So it'll all be encompassed in that as we go forward. Now with this one here, I'm actually going to hand it over to Justin Cuevas, who serves, again, as one of our managers in solid waste, to talk about our glass transition. I know this was something that we received direction on previously. As promised, we're going to come back here tonight and just walk you through some of the changes we made. We did see some gaps as we're making that transition from curbside collections to public drop-off, and we recognize we could do some better work out there. We've already made those changes and adjustments. I'm going to let Justin walk you through those just to help you understand some of the work we put in. Justin.
Evening, Mayor and Council. So part of this transition plan after our last meeting was how can we serve the community better with this curbside drop-off. Spoke with my team. We looked at some of the drop-off area locations that we've historically had. In preparation for this conversation, we have added 2 additional drop-off sites across the city to serve better. We've added a J. Lively Center. We have a drop-off there for our glass program. We also added one to North Marketplace, so that way individuals didn't have to drive all the way to the landfill to serve the east side of town. In that process, after our last conversation, we started developing a communications plan of how we would move this program forward after we had your direction, making sure that we had social media, standard letters, through our website, through flyers, trying to encompass everything and everyone that will be impacted by this, and making sure that we do the billing and do the other processes appropriately as we move forward. So speaking to the communications plan, as I'd mentioned, social media, we have constant contact. We have an example of it on the screen. Most of you are familiar with the constant contact. All of our major holidays, as we've been utilizing since January 1st of 2025. Constant Contact has been a tremendous resource for us with our holiday plans, how we're adjusting the schedules, how we're shifting since our team now takes the holidays off for the most part aside from our downtown core. Constant Contact has been a tremendous support for us. As it goes, there are a handful of individuals who do not have email. So we have a backup plan that we're going to blanket out a standard letter to all of our 1,300 residents approximately that may or may not have that email access. We will have a letter going out as well with all of our contact information, copies of the maps, and we will also have flyers going out, similar to our bulky cards that many of you have seen at all of our public locations. Just communicating, trying to get this out through social media, as many residents as we can in that 1,300 group. It's about our approximate customer base that we're going to try and just mass blanket and communicate with. So for the operational changes, what we're looking at is July 1st as a recommended date. This kind of gives everyone a little bit of a time frame to plan for, learn where our sites are, start notifying customers June 1st as we have the letters already completed. Just went through a draft process, had everyone overview before we even get that. Once we get the direction from you individuals, we can have that notified out as quickly as possible, kind of moving things quickly, making sure that people understand. As I'd mentioned, we have the updated drop-off locations. We'll be putting that on our website. We will have the flyers. We will have the maps. That way everyone is well informed. Here's the example of all of our new locations. This is the verbiage of where they're at, some directions. We also have some instructions at the very top of it, kind of breaking down what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, trying to inform and give people the best practices moving forward of how to dispose of your glass. As you can see, we have West Phoenix, NAU, we have our transfer station over on Butler near Sam's Club, we have the Continental Little League, we have Marketplace, we have J Lively, and then the Cinder Lake landfill is our other drop-off location. Here's a broken out map, so that way you can see we had 4 initial sites. We wanted to make sure we had the city covered as best as possible. That way people had to travel less distances to accomplish what they needed to. And I will pass it on to Sheriff for the next piece.
Yep, sorry. I think it's really important to note the map and the breakout you see here is going to be a flyer that's going to be posted at many of our facilities, so that way it'll be accessible to people to be able to get a visual on where those drop-off locations are going to be, and then how they can get out there and utilize those drop locations. So. All right, sorry about that, Sheriff. Come on up.
Councilmember House.
Sorry, before we move on to the next part of the presentation, I'm just wondering if there's any concern with this transition and the locations. Is there any concern about the proximity of some of those two, like, recreational sites? I'm just thinking about the potential for, like, broken glass or things like that. Is that a consideration or concern, or how is that being mitigated?
Yeah, the 2 additional sites that we added were vetted out pretty well. There's no additional concerns that we have in those areas. All the areas that we have assigned are also set up where they could be easily serviced if they had to partner with our streets team, bring out a street sweeper. We've done it before. The existing locations were already pre-identified. They've been out there and they've been working pretty well. I will say that the people who do utilize this service are usually fairly respectful. We don't see a lot of abuse of this particular service, which is great. I can't speak for that for all of our commercial collection sites, but the glass drop-off sites have been fairly well respected.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me? Okay, so like they said, my name's Cher. I'm the waste prevention specialist with the city of Flagstaff, and I really wanted to just say thank you for the opportunity to give you an overview of our waste prevention strategic plan. Waste prevention is one of the most effective ways cities can reduce environmental impact, lower cost, and extend landfill capacity. So today I'll briefly share our strategic approach, which focuses on education, services, partnership, and community leadership. So our first pillar is education and outreach. Recycling and waste reduction systems only work when residents understand how to use them. So on the left, you'll see our core community engagement messages. We're focusing on where does your recycling actually go? So for example, with this new campaign, that would follow the journey of a recyclable item like a plastic bottle or something like that, from when you drop it in the bin to when it gets collected and processed. Which brings us to our second key message, which is wish cycling, the contamination problem. So many folks, they feel guilty and they'll throw away some items or throw them in the recycling bin, thinking they'll be recycled, but in fact they're actually just contaminating the recycling, and they'll end up going to landfill anyways. In fact, contamination is a big challenge nationwide. The EPA estimates that single-stream recycling contamination rates often range from 15 to 25%, which can cause otherwise recyclable materials, like I said, to go to the landfill. And to reach both our residents and visitors, we will be using different or multiple types of communication. So as you can see, we'll use social media, newsletter, radio ads, community presentation, tabling. We also have Recycle by City alerts and emails. We use that especially to share operational changes like holiday schedule adjustments. And then we also will be doing a lot of signage improvements as well. So things that you might see on like our like waste trucks or things like that. We usually have like little, or even like the buses have like signs that talk about recycling and waste. And then our last message shares that recycling is an important tool, but it is the last step of the zero waste principles. And so we'll go more into that and how we look at our other principles in the next slide. So our next pillar of our strategy is events and services. So education alone is not enough. Residents also need opportunities to take action, and that's why our second focus area is providing services and events that make waste reduction accessible. So our programs highlight repair, reuse, composting, and responsible disposal. So for example, Fix-It clinics, which is happening this weekend, everybody, so if you want to come out, give residents hand-on support to repair items instead of replacing them. Research from Ellen MacArthur Foundation shows that extending the life of products is one of the most effective strategies within a circular economy. The second thing I wanted to talk about is our residential food scrap drop-off program. It is our composting initiative, and it's pretty critical because food waste alone represents 24% of what goes into our U.S. landfills. And in Flagstaff, we should be really proud because of our food scrap program, and we have actually diverted 40,000 pounds of waste each year. And in the pictures that you see, this is actually from one of our Fix-It clinics. So we have a multi-generational folks that are coming to these events, fixing bikes, technology. We also have a component for kids where they learn how to deconstruct items and learn about the mechanics of how things work. Okay, so our third pillar of our strategy is partnerships. Waste prevention touches almost every part of the community, so collaboration is essential to our process. You'll see an image in the center that shows a circular and sustainable Flagstaff relies on the following partners, so our city collaborations, our state and regional networks, business and tourism, education, and community partners. One example is our work with the Downtown Business Alliance, where we're integrating recycling education onto these big belly bins that you'll find at the Heritage Square and that are used by hundreds of people daily, making them ideal touch points for public education. We're also exploring stronger collaboration with Discover Flagstaff by connecting sustainability messages with our tourism. So basically what we're thinking about is maybe having some QR codes that are multilingual, so it could reach different types of people that are visiting our city. And internally, we continue to work closely with Public Works and other city divisions so that messaging, outreach, and operation remain aligned. So these partnerships allow us to extend our impact far beyond what a single staff, me, could achieve alone. And then our fourth area is community leadership. So waste prevention is a big undertaking that many of us across the city are contributing to, and I'm excited to step into my role as waste prevention specialist to help broaden this impact. This includes relaunching the Zero Waste Ambassadors Program, which was formerly known as Master Recyclers, to strengthen our community engagement and outreach. The program trains community members to support education, outreach, and behavior change efforts, creating a multiplier effect across the city. We also are planning to build a better resource library, so that will include a sustainable business guide to make waste reduction practices more accessible to both residents and local businesses. And looking ahead, one of our longer-term goals is the Zero Waste Events Program. This would add sustainability support to event permitting and help ensure that festivals, gatherings, and other public events are aligned with the city's waste reduction goals. As we continue to grow and engage the Flagstaff community, having continued support will be an important step to increasing our waste prevention goals. Thank you, Council.
Do we have any questions or comments? I do. Okay, I'll just start in then. For schedule changes, is texting ever going to be a something that we could utilize to let people know that there's a schedule change, their pickup's going to be different because of holiday?
Currently, that's not something that we have the capability of doing. Having said that, that'd be something I would love to be able to do. I think that's where the evolution of communications is going. I just don't know how we get there with the right platforms. We just don't have the capabilities yet.
And along those lines, also to remind people of when bulk trash is coming to their section. I'm sure somebody knows how to do this. And it looks like Nicole has something.
Mayor and Council, through Recycle by City, for community members that have signed up with Recycle by City, we are able to send push notifications. We just have to budget for that element of that platform. We currently spend about $15,000 a year on that platform. The push notifications would increase that, but that is something we will definitely look at from an educational standpoint, and of course partner with solid waste to ensure that if there are changes, this is a mechanism we could use. We
Great.
just need to encourage people to sign up.
Yes. Yes, yes. Okay, and for the glass, what will be the process for picking the bins up from homeowners?
Yeah, so I'll let Justin speak to that. They have kind of a logistical process they're going to work through on that. What we are going to do is we're going to stop billing a month in advance of the month when we would start collecting those. We just feel it's only fair as we work through this process, because I can't guarantee what day each section is going to be picked up. But again, I'll let Justin talk to the logistics of that a little bit.
So our plan logistically, as I said, we have about 1,300 customers. Their typical service day is Wednesday, and we have it broken out by section. So we will work with our bin maintenance team, I will work with my supervisors, and we will schedule it out each week, working through those same sections. Similar to how their glass pickup is, we'll just pick up their bins in that manner as we communicate.
And by communicate, you mean communicate with the homeowners to put their bins, to leave them out there? Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
And wish cycling, I was pretty shocked to see things that people put in their recycling bins on the floor of the MRF. And like, I don't even think that was wishing. I think,
We've seen treadmills.
yeah, I think some items people just chose to put it in that bin. What I wasn't clear on is whether any of that gets sorted out and then the rest of the load could still be recycled, or whether the entire load will go to the landfill.
Yeah, so as you saw while you were there, if we find things that are clearly egregious that we can get out of there with that loader you saw there with the grapple, he will pull that off to the side. We keep a 40-yard roll-off bin out there that goes out to the landfill more frequently than we would like to see, but they do pull as much of that out of there as we can. It helps us in a multitude of reasons. One, it keeps us from paying the transport cost to have it go down to the valley, and then two, it also helps with our rebate while working with Friedman, who's our third-party vendor who actually does the sort. To properly sort that material, as you saw, there's just too much of it to get through it all as with the current infrastructure we have in place. So we do our best with grabbing it as we can see it with the equipment. Sometimes they get out by hand and pull a lot of that out of there, And if you, our weekly updates have a lot of those images in place where they do pull as much as they can.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see, Councilmember House, no, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions. For the glass recycling, are there any private companies that are going to pick that up? And if so, would we pass that information along to homeowners that may still want that convenience?
You know, I haven't heard of any. I don't know of any that are doing that today. Right now, we are kind of the primary service provider on that. The reason for, I think, that is there really isn't much of a market for glass at this point. So I don't see the private sector jumping in just because it would be a fairly large loss in their operation with where we currently see the market. Could change at some point, which is, you know, the reason we're shifting our methodology here. Still using it for a different intended purpose, not necessarily just mixing it in at the landfill, but using it for an alternative daily cover. And then honestly, our production numbers are very low in comparison to a lot of other cities. So for us, we're going to see a fairly large pile build up over about a month, maybe 2 at the landfill, and then they will use that once it gets to an appropriate tonnage out there.
Okay, thank you. And I'm wondering, Cher, you were talking about different partnerships, and I was thinking about the Azalita project, and I remember I used to see them around town, and I'm just wondering, are they still going, and what is can you expand on what they do and their mission? Because I found them very useful. I used to help out with the film festival. I know they were big with that, and it could just be that I'm not at the same location that they're at, so wanted you to touch on it.
So they're a small nonprofit that's dedicated to stopping the use of single-use plastics. And so one of the ways that they do that is they offer a reusable utensils, cups, dishes. We actually used it for Earth Day. So on Earth Day, we contacted Azalita, was like, hey, we need some cups. And so they provide that as a service. They also do a little bit of education work to go into schools and talk about plastics and things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, Councilmember House.
Don't go anywhere, Cher. This question is for you as well. Along the same lines with the Azalita project and Willow Bend and some of the partnerships that you're forging, I had pulled up the Azalita project website and was seeing the art exhibit that they're doing. And I'm wondering if there have been considerations of partnership, this is where I thought you were going, with like groups like BPAC or Creative Flagstaff, other groups that could combine the arts and education with these efforts to reduce waste in the community. Because it seems like something that people get really passionate about seeing. Yeah. The artistic endeavors that people can reuse some of these, what would traditionally just be waste products for, and finding more ways to bring that to the community could be a really fun way to approach this.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Council House. I think that's something that we can definitely investigate and look into and be a part of. I know that we've probably done something in the past that I'm sure I've only been around for like 9 weeks, so I'm quite new, but I do think that I would love to explore different options to get the community talking. So I think art definitely helps bridge that.
Thank you very much. And just so you know, for 9 weeks, that was a wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you.
All right, I don't see any other questions or comments, so I'm going to open it up to public comment. And before I do, I would just like to thank the 2 individuals who are planning to speak to us for all of their personal investment in waste management and recycling. You have been stalwart advocates and I appreciate your work. Mr. Al White.
So can you hear me? So I gotta admit that I'm a touch on the confused side here. Looking at the slide presentation, and I first looked at it last night, and now I kind of went over it here as you went through. I don't know if I can do all of this in 3 minutes, but the confusion that I have is on the council direction in the first place. Was the council direction find ways to improve recycling, or was the council direction find ways to eliminate the curbside glass recycling? And I'm not sure exactly what direction was given. It looks like getting rid of the curbside glass recycling is a foregone conclusion at this point in time. And I'm curious to know, if all of the considerations that were weighed included such things as the volume of the glass that's been recycled, and how many curbside customers would be affected. Where does the glass even end up going? And considerations along those lines before we made this policy decision, or someone recommended this policy change to be made and get rid of the curbside aspect, because you charge money for that curbside aspect now. And if you're going into a rate consideration, one of the things you should think about, I think, is the fact that, at some point in time, there was a consideration done as to what the rate would be that would adequately cover curbside glass recycling. And if that's not the case, think twice about what it is that you look at in a rate evaluation. My concern with that is I'm concerned about a rate study being done when so many folks should be invited for input in what the program looks like and does in order to figure out what it costs and how to pay for it. We want to participate. We have some ideas, and with that in mind, and seeing I have like 30 seconds left, I would strongly recommend that you require explicit cost per ton outputs for the landfill, for collection, and for recycling, add a requirement for net cost of recycling per household, as this is what often drives policy decisions, and also make your rate people consider a cardboard recovery program. Right now, this, I think, is where your biggest opportunity likely sits. Someone want to ask me to continue?
I was going to ask you to send those points to us.
Well, yeah, I want to ask to be included in the process of evaluating what these programs should look like. And I think that's a very important consideration when deciding what to charge.
It absolutely is, and that is right. You're considering this study to be perhaps not as not to the level that the water services rate study was done, but I can say that we did have a presentation about some of the finances of the different elements of recycling, and maybe staff can remind me at that our direction was that we wanted the rate study before you made any kind of decisions about recycling, and we wanted it sooner rather than later. And I'm not quite remembering where we landed on the, did we have anything that we said in terms of glass?
Yeah, so in our previous meeting on this here, we received clear direction to move forward with the transition on the glass. That is one of those ones we have gone through the evaluation. We went through that in the previous meeting. Unfortunately, that was one of those ones that just doesn't pencil out at this point. If we had a market somewhere nearby that we could find some sort of value for the commodity at this point, and then again, we produce a very small quantity. I think we were 40 tons every 2 months, so it's a very small piece. So yeah, as we look at this, we also know that there's going to be pretty much every service provided is going to see some sort of rate recommendation, and this one right here was one that we had already had lined up to have that conversation on. I will say the only thing that we did postpone on from the last meeting was to continue down the path of every other week recycling. Now, while we've continued the investigation, we have not pushed that towards any sort of action. We're just going to house that information and that data for when we bring in the consultant, and that will most likely be a decision point in service level through the rate study.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I appreciate it. Sam and Councilmember White, good questions. Council Mayor, let me just provide a little context, and I think we maybe could have gone back and done a little bit of a history slide, and I think this will help place it into context to the comments of the public speaker and to your questions, Mayor. We have gone through a couple years of evaluation, and as you know, as our financial status has not been fantastic in this fund, we've worked really hard and diligently to make program modifications that have allowed us to maintain, but we have not kept up with inflation and with fuel expenses and labor wages. All of those things are what every agency is dealing with. When we last brought you, late in last calendar year, our next round of recommendations, if you recall, we had really these built into series of recommendations. We took the entire program, and you might remember the hoist and haul modifications we made. We made some bulky trash modifications to schedule. We adjusted with holidays. We had implemented a lot of those tactics to try to work on the finances of the fund. We've shown decent improvement. Our next round was a bit more aggressive, and that's where we came back late last year and we discussed the curbside recycling curbside glass, every other week recycling. And we heard loud and clear that the community didn't have enough education quite yet. We weren't ready to maybe make some of those larger program adjustments. We had no trouble stalling those a little bit. We also at that time were in close discussions with management services and with you all in what the timing of our rate study was going to look like. At that time, we were scheduled for 2027, and I think the wisdoms of all kind of realized it was going to be more smart or more wise to bring that study forward before we make any further adjustments, with the exception of that glass collection. So that is exactly what we're doing here tonight. This was actually supposed to be a presentation about the new modifications coming in July. We've kind of modified that. Now we're more focused on the rate study conversation because that is what we're doing full court press. We're really focused on that rate study. We're now really digging in deep so we can get that done before the end of the calendar year. The glass was the one exception with those limited customers. We knew and we had a lot of support and we felt that it was really something that we did need to move quickly. That one we still felt pretty good about. So that is why you've seen that action. But the rest of those items are truly rolled up into the rate study. So as Sam mentioned, and I think just to make it clear and to the point, all of the programs, everything from collection to post-collection, transfer station operations, our shipment to the valley with our product, the actual disposal of the product and the cell development, the capital program of buying vehicles, all of that has to get rolled into the operation. So we will likely come back to you all with our consultant and with our results and our community feedback that will show you in order to do option A, option B, option C, here's the cost to our ratepayers, to our residents, to our commercial customers. And we know, watching the water case closely, that is a very delicate balance you all have to walk. And we want to make sure you have some options, but we also want to live in the world of reality. We are an enterprise fund. We do not take general fund assistance. We have to make this run like a business. And I think you've heard me say this over and over. My commitment has been to try and find as much efficiency as possible. We found it a lot in not running as much overtime by taking those holidays. Some of those tactics worked really, really well. The rest of these, I think, are going to be a great community conversation. Director Antonopoulos has said often that recycling costs money, and that's one program, that's one element, but it is going to be one thing that we really look at and say, if this program costs X, is the community willing to pay for that service? And I think that's going to be really a good exercise as we get into this study, but I don't want to get so far ahead of that conversation, and I think some of the comments that talk about how we deal with the product, I don't know yet. I think we're starting to really understand and dig in to what that might look like. And those are the options we'll commit to bring back to you all. So I hope that provides a little bit of context of why we're back and why we're at this stage. But I think now you're going to see our entire focus is now towards the rate study. We'll kind of hold on service changes with the exception of glass, curbside, and now really, really dig in deep on that rate study. Is that helpful?
It is, and I'm wondering, you're developing the scope of work for the study, but the methods used, will that come after you've chosen a consultant? And really, my main question and concern is community involvement and legitimate, like,
Absolutely.
in there helping to structure what this looks like?
I think the answer is a little bit of both. We're going to clearly articulate that to our consultants. They've been having those meetings and communicating what Flagstaff typically has. Once the consultant is selected through the procurement process, I envision us clearly articulating that and then building that in. And then that is my job to say, we don't have enough community meetings, or that seems about right, or let's go ahead and add this, this, and this. And I think that is really the effort at the highest of levels to try to really make sure we're capturing that feedback. Whether or not it's successful is always the kind of carrot and stick. We have watched the city of Phoenix really closely. Sam alluded to it. Their case and rate study was fascinating. I can't remember the dozens and dozens of community meetings and the hundreds of hours of outreach, but it was pretty extensive. And then they've gone just about over a year, and they've had some stalls and they've had some comebacks. They had a pretty successful rate case with a fairly aggressive rate increase over time. So we learned a lot from that. I think their presentations are good. I think a lot of the materials are decent. So I think learning from other communities that go through the exact same thing we go through, just give us good examples. And if we can see something we like, I'd like to make sure we're at least paying attention and modeling and understanding, is that effective? And I think that's the way we get to the best community feedback. Not always with tables, charts, and graphs. How can we really focus in on true good content that allows us to build a solid rate? We have the business side with management services to know what the operation costs us. Now, how can we communicate that in a really clear and concise manner?
And get feedback on our inputs and our assumptions and.
Absolutely. Yep.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Councilmember Garcia has a question for Mr. White.
Yeah, Al, how's it going? Former Councilmember White. I wanted to, you ended your statement on kind of a topic that you weren't able to expand on. And I wanted to make sure that you were able to, if you wanted to, expand on that specifically, succinctly. If you're willing to just mail it in, I'll read that too.
Thanks. Yeah, my concern is about canceling the glass. Curbside recycling, canceling the glass curbside recycling prior to evaluating whether or not a rate increase could accommodate it and the possibilities in the future as part of the entire recycling program. And the entire curbside recycling program, which has been essentially a city policy as defined by a council prior to mine, and continued with the council since. And I want to make sure that this council understands that if they're going to make a significant change to that policy, what those ramifications are and can it be avoided. The big 30,000 foot question is whether or not recycling remains a significant way to increase the life of the landfill, to contribute to your carbon neutrality program. There's a number of overreaching questions that need to be answered, I think. And if you embrace the concept of recycling, you know, it took a serious hit when Norton ran away, and we took it over without having necessarily a way to continue source separation at the MRF, and to say in a blanket statement that recycling is not working flies against the evidence that we see with Friedman's Recycling in Phoenix and what they're doing with New Mexico's product and our product, that developing the right markets, finding those markets, working to sell to them helps. And cardboard isn't going anywhere but up. I mean, the use of cardboard, yes, we may be entering a recession, and if that's the case, maybe a few less Amazon boxes will go into the waste stream. But I'll tell you what, turn that around in that cardboard. There was a time when in my company we were getting paid $200 a ton for cardboard. You can't afford to let that revenue share go away. And I did, you know, because it's a volatile market, if the community still wants it and wants to pay for it, that should be part of your rate study. That's what I'm saying.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to clarify.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Ward Davis.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Ward Davis. I lived here for 20 years now, the longest place I've ever lived, and I'm wearing my Master Recycler button. You know, so I wanted to touch on the public outreach again. It's been talked about quite a bit, but this is going to touch a lot of people. And the normal process doesn't get a lot of outreach, and it's a little difficult. For the water rates, you know, there was a lot of interaction with a lot of people, and this one is even probably more problematic, affecting a lot of people, and they can see the differences of all the little things we do. So we don't have a solid waste commission. We don't have a recycling commission. The only thing we have is a sustainability commission. I used 3 minutes at the last meeting talking about this, and they're very busy. So I don't know exactly how to work that in, but that might be one forum to use. As it is, I have to use public records requests for everything. There's not a lot of information flowing around readily available. And so I collect a lot of information from public records requests, and it has given me a lot of background. And that sort of leads to AI. I've been using it a lot, and it's really been very, very helpful. I've been using ChatGPT. If you have any questions about what a rate study should look like, or what are best practices, that's all there in great detail, because there's so much recycling. I mean, I work on projects where it's not very easy to get good data, but everybody has it. So when you ask ChatGPT, you get very good answers and very thorough answers. I really encourage that. This rate study is likely to take 6-8 months. Anything you can do to speed it up would help. I know a lot about what needs to happen next in some areas. Pulling the cardboard makes sense. I know now because of AI how to do that better. I always knew the insides of the MRF, but it wasn't going to do what we wanted to do. AI helped explain that. So we have a pretty good story to tell. It's just that we won't be able to tell it till this thing is over with unless you want to work it into the rate study. And that's enough. Any questions?
Councilmember Spence.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ward, for your presentation. I would appreciate it if you could expand a little on the value of recycled cardboard recycling, and what is it that leads to this question of what is the value? Mr. White mentioned that it used to be $200 a ton was the value of providing that product. But are there elements of cardboard recycling that increase the value compared to how we're doing it now?
Yeah, cardboard, the price right now is getting a little low. It's around 60, more typically it's $75 a ton. It hasn't been 200 for a while. But half of our recycling is cardboard. Yet when we send it to Phoenix, we see only 36%. So we lose a ton of cardboard. It gets mashed, and when they pull it apart, they can't see it as cardboard, so it's lost. It's one of the more valuable products, and it's very difficult to transport because it's got all that air in those corrugations. And so it really negatively affects how many trips we have to run. So it's not too hard to pull cardboard out, and almost all the people that have looked at anything to do with Flagstaff have concluded that you got to get the cardboard out. You don't want to transport it somewhere. And when I started, I didn't know how to do that, but by asking a lot of questions of ChatGPT, I now know how to do that, and there's a little company needed to run it. It's about 5 employees. There's about $2 million worth of investment. But cardboard just makes sense. It's everything about it. Everybody's looked at it and come to the same conclusion.
Thank you.
Councilmember Garcia, did you indicate that you have a question for Sam?
I did, but I think that Lori, Councilmember Matthews, has a question.
She's after public well, I guess this is after public comments. So thank you. Let's go to Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. This comment's just for Chair. I see in this slide that's up here about city collaboration and stuff. I recently learned, just through a family connection, that there are companies, nonprofits out there that, like we have hundreds of events every year in Flagstaff, and there's nonprofits and maybe there's some for-profit companies out there that will attend those events and separate the recyclable material and stand over the trash dispenser and just kind of direct people and stuff, and really cleans up and reduces the contaminants down to almost nothing. Is that something that is in your plan to maybe, I don't know if that's imposed on the event person or the city, but is that something that can be incorporated?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, at our Earth Day event, so we partnered with Compost Crowd and Knackered Pepsi. So Knackered Pepsi had or has a grant where they collect bottles and cans, and so they came and had 5 bins, and they collected all of that, and they had their interns and folks going around making sure that folks knew what to put in those containers. And then the same thing with Compost Crowd. They were doing the same thing with food scraps. So I definitely think for events and stuff, we could definitely list options for whoever is hosting that event. If they want to hire Compost Crowd, Knackered Pepsi actually does it for free, which is wonderful. And so we could definitely provide more information on those services.
Thank you.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this question I think is either for Sam or Scott, and it's about the glass recycling. And really what I'm wondering is how many current customers we have utilizing that, whether it be a number or a percentage. And if you don't have it off the top of your head, I can take that offline.
Yeah, I know that originally Justin was speaking to that 1,300. That was at our peak. Right now, I think we're probably closer to that 300 range is what we're seeing in our current billing system. And honestly, I watched we lost 3 this week that have turned away service, just not utilizing it. A lot of people are seeing the cost on their bill right now, and we're getting some pushback on that. Not pushback, they've been actually really nice about it. We've been good about providing them with information for drop-off locations. So we've seen it dwindle down quite a bit over the years.
Thank you. And just so I can help me understand a little bit better, I was a little bit familiar with the number, but I wanted to bring it back up for context. So what kind of operation is it to handle picking up all of those 300 cans? Is it once a week with one truck, or is it multiple days with multiple trucks?
Yeah, so right now it's a monthly service the way it's set up. What the truck will do is it'll go do its normal trash route. And then it basically has to drive every road that service would be on. I wish it was more consolidated to one particular area. They wind up driving almost every road, just trying to go capture every cart that's out, and then we don't know if it's out or not. So what we're seeing is as it's dwindled down, which was a big piece of the decision point for service change, as we've seen it dwindle down, some people will go 3 or 4 months before we see their cart out. Well, we don't know that until we get to the home to service it. On your trash collection day or your recycle days, we pretty much see, a pretty high percentage of customers putting out their carts. On this one here, it's a very hit and miss. So we spend a lot of time chasing carts that may or may not be down or out at the curbside after they've done their trash collection that day.
So what you're saying is the amount that we're charging isn't necessarily paying for the service?
Yeah, it's not even close to recovery at this point. Again, we're not trying to make money on our service, just cost recovery. Yeah, we're nowhere close, even with the low service level, service quantities we have.
And just for sake of conversation, in that cost recovery, in order to be successful, is there a set aside for equipment, or are we handling that through the general fund or other means?
Everything comes through the solid waste rates and fees. There is a portion annually that gets put aside. It's typically been about $600,000. There was a point when we could get 3 to 4 trucks on that. Right now, we're getting 2 on a good run. So what we also saw, we saw a reduction in that set aside over the last few years because we were eating into our reserves year over year, running our deficit. So we were seeing less and less being purchased. We did work with management services in anticipation of the rate study. You probably all saw that there were 4 trucks budgeted for next year. Kind of going out on a limb in hopes that the rate study helps us recover some of that as we commit to those 4 trucks next year. Again, we're just trying to replace what we currently have. It doesn't account for the current shortfall in routes that we have. So I think that's the other piece we have to really take into consideration. The piece we've talked about, our drivers are collecting about 1,200 cans a route a day. They should be close to 700. And then that's just to service what we have today. That doesn't include Canyon Del Rio coming on. As we extend, JW Powell and we start seeing those communities grow, we've got a lot of growth that's coming in that we don't have a way to capture at this point, but we're trying to absorb it as we can.
So when we talk about this rate study for the future, and this question may come up again, are you adding those type of projections as the education piece? I always call those parts that you talked of, Canyon Del Rio and JW Powell, as Flagstaff Part 2. Yeah. And I don't know if it's a direct correlation to an entire population moved over there or not, but there's got to be some sort of numbers that you could put towards how many trucks you're going to need that we just flat out can't get right now.
Yeah, we've already put together some of those calculations.
thank you. I can't wait to see those, and I can't wait for the education piece for the public. I am excited about the rate study and the communication to hear back from the public what the concerns are, so that way they can be addressed as you guys have been addressing them throughout the whole time talking to us here on council.
Agreed. No, thank you. Appreciate the questions.
So I have a question and a comment regarding the information needing to be obtained through a public records request. I'm hoping that when we redo the website, again, with the public-facing information, to be able to provide as much information as we can to cut down on the need to do a public records request. So that's my comment. And my question is, when do you see this study starting?
Yeah, we've already, like I said, started with our internal team about a month ago. We meet every other Monday at this point. It's mostly with the directorship in these sections. And then we have working groups that have spun off and already started down paths like the operational data gathering, our consultant management, our communications piece. So we have some strategic working groups already moving forward on this. Yeah, it's rolling. We're moving.
And when do you see it wrapping up and making recommendations back to council?
Yeah, honestly, that's gonna be very dependent on the timing of the consultant coming on board. And then honestly, once we start seeing the magnitude of the information and options that are gonna come back, I think that's gonna start to factor in how many discussions you all want to have, as well as our community engagement. So I wish I had a date. I don't have a date certain at this
6
point.
months, a year?
A year is probably max. I think if we're pushing the year, then I think we need to step it up.
And financially, what would it look like to continue glass recycling, curbside? Because recognizing that we're going to continue recycling glass, but we're just talking about the curbside. Financially, what does that look like if it were to continue and be included in the rate study?
Honestly, we won't know until we get those rates back and we get the study of information back. And then it's going to be an evaluation of who wants to continue forward with the service. There will almost guaranteed be an increase in that service cost, which is where we're already seeing some pushback in the community. But there might be a handful, and then it's going to be an evaluation of this elected body of is it worth the service and manpower to provide that service at the curbside or the drop locations. I think the other big factor is going to be the fact that we have no place to take the glass. There really isn't a service provider outside of the one that we're using to transport to Kingman at this point, and then their services are no longer recycling the product, so then they're charging us to haul it to Las Vegas. So we're seeing a double charge on the product that's just not getting utilized. So we're running into that issue as well of we want to do the best thing with it, but we're seeing more than just our operation impacted. Now we're seeing additional fees just because there isn't a service provider at this point. We had one in the valley. We even went and toured it, brought up a pretty large contingent with us. It was actually a really good facility. Unfortunately, caught fire and they weren't able to recover.
City Manager.
Mayor, I was hoping that I see Rick Tatter online. I want to make sure that we have some realistic expectations on this rate study.
Agreed.
And I was hoping Rick could clarify the timeline, because if you recall, we actually bumped this rate study up above other rate studies. So I know Rick has been trying to juggle that, and yes.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Rick Tatter, Management Service Director. Yeah, a solid waste study does take a bit more effort than just a simple rate that we've done in the past, like parking rates and those kind of things. So I kind of see this one taking a minimum 6 months, maybe 8 or so. But like Sam and Scott said, we're kind of in that early stage to figure out the communication, the outreach, the data and all that. So we don't have a firm date as of yet for this.
Okay, thank you. So if glass were to be included in the study and we ended curbside recycling now, but had additional information at the end of the rate study that would warrant bringing back curbside glass recycling, have you thought of that possibility?
Yeah, I think all items are possibilities at this point. If anything, it would make for a really effective reset. Right now, we have a lot of confusion on people who had inherited glass recycling as they moved into a new home, businesses who have it outside, who are using it currently as a trash receptacle. So it might be a really good reset for the program, if nothing else. But yeah, I think all options are on the table. I don't see us eliminating anything. It wouldn't be our place. We're going to allow, obviously, you all and the community to dictate what service we'll provide. We're just going to tie it back to the cost associated.
And then that reset could be factored into sustainability's education plan around recycling. Okay, thank you. Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Sam and team, for all of the great information. Just going back to the question of public engagement or involvement in this process, I'm wondering if you can give more of a timeline on when those community conversations would start. If the conversations around the rate study are already starting, just pending the consultant, at what point do you envision the community conversations or public involvement starting?
Yeah, and I've spoke with each of the vendors that we're evaluating at this point. I've given pretty clear direction that this is going to be a rapid movement as we move forward here. I expect the highest of quality, the highest of engagement throughout the process, not just with the community, but with my teams as well. So the sooner I can get them on board, the faster that can move. But I don't have any need for anybody who can't provide that service fairly rapidly. And right now, everybody has been very, very supportive of that concept. They see that quite often, honestly, as we go through these. Most agencies are not going through the rate study because everything is okay. So I think they also see the need for that. Our hope is to get those meetings scheduled ASAP. We want to also communicate that to the public with enough time so they can coordinate and be there. Last thing I want to do is put out notice on a Friday that we're having a community meeting on a Sunday. It just doesn't allow for anybody in the community. I would be upset, trying to schedule time with kids and events and everything else and not have enough time to get out there. So our goal would be to get the communication out as soon as possible, get those scheduled, and then we want to go to the community, neighborhood by neighborhood as closely as we can.
And just to add into that, Shannon and I just spoke, and our office will be also engaged in this process, as well as our public affairs director as well.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, any last comments or questions? Thank you very much for all the work, everyone who has had a hand in this.
No, thank you all. We appreciate the feedback tonight. Thank you.
All right, we are down to open call to the public. Don't see any public comment. So announcements and updates to from council and city manager. And I will start down with Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. This morning, I was at the Sustainability Building with APS as they did a presentation on their rate case study. It was really informative, and we also got in a discussion on their process to bringing a data center online, and it's not just a call and say, you know, turn on my electricity because I'm starting a data center. So it's very layered, and it was a lot of good information. Tomorrow is Mountain Line's board meeting, monthly board meeting, as well as tomorrow evening at Buffalo Park from 5 to 7, Denim Day, that brings attention to victims of sexual abuse, and that's at Buffalo Park. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could clarify, maybe other people didn't hear it the way I heard it, but when you say, when they're talking about bringing a data center online, you're saying just in general, not that there are any plans for Northern Arizona or Flagstaff?
Correct, correct. This is just what they've learned from other states and their process because of the high usage. There's, just briefly, they have to sign a 20-year commitment. They have to pay for the infrastructure, and they basically build their own, APS builds an infrastructure specifically for their use, so it's not transferred over to consumers. There's a lot other layers that go in this, but they're mainly talking about what's happening down in Phoenix area. They didn't have any indication anybody's coming up here. But it was just interesting to know somebody's not going to just show up and buy a building or build a building without going through an extensive process with APS to make sure that they've committed and paid for everything up front.
Thank you. Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be excited to see all of you, all of my colleagues, and some staff at the annual United Way breakfast meeting and community impact ceremony on Thursday at 8 a.m. And later on in that day, there is, actually, I think Vice Mayor Sweet will probably be speaking to the British phone booth, so I will move on to what we'll be doing on Friday. And that is the Sunnyside Neighborhood Association, in conjunction with the City of Flagstaff, is starting very, very preliminary discussions about 4th Street improvements. And we're focusing our discussions on the business owners in that general area. So this is just a shout out to any business owners that I have not personally visited yet, which are probably very few in that neighborhood over this last week. To come out to the Market of Dreams at 7:30 a.m. for a 1-hour discussion about what they would like to see on their block as far as improvements for our future. And this is one of a series of impactful discussions wrapped around the Sunnyside neighborhood area. This just being one of those components, the business element. We also are talking about a neighborhood plan as well as the Ponderosa Park improvements, but that'll be a different discussion on a different day. This is simply for the business community, and Vice Mayor Sweet will be there to speak to the business community since she is a business owner as well. This entire weekend, I want to make a huge shout out to the community to come downtown or wherever there is activity around ArtX. That we have the intro ceremony on Saturday, and it'll be closing on Monday. This is an off year, I believe, for RX, so it won't be quite as impactful as it has been in the past, but it'll give us more of a condensed and just like a nice quick shot of a 3-day arts, entertainment, and visual experience of what we are putting together here in Flagstaff from the artist community. And then there was something that happened on Council Member Aslan's Day that I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, I'd like to invite the entire community out for the Joel Montavo STEM Education Center groundbreaking event. I know I'll be seeing several of my colleagues there. This will be at 3:30 p.m. on May the 4th. Yeah, I don't know. It's a long meeting. Sorry, guys. It's trying to have some fun in the last moments. But this groundbreaking event will be located at It will be located at 2211 East Spruce Avenue at the old fire station number 2, which backs Joel Montavo baseball field right there in the Sunnyside neighborhood. If you, folks that aren't familiar with Sunnyside, if you're familiar with Salsa Brava, that road that goes right behind Salsa Brava in between, I'm blanking on the bagel store name, which, yeah, Fat Bagels, then it's directly behind there. And this will be a groundbreaking for the Joel Montavo STEM Education Center that will STEM Education Center that we will be putting a shovel in the ground and preparing for bigger things in the Sunnyside neighborhood. It's all good news for Sunnyside this week and all the activations that are happening. So community members, get ready to put your input because the city has stepped up to listen to what we want in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Councilmember Aslan.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. All too easy.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilmember Garcia, for letting me talk about the British Phone Booth Library. It is a grand opening with a ribbon cutting. It's by Jake Bacon. This is a new amenity that will be at the Flagstaff Visitor Center. So join us Thursday, April 30th at 11 a.m. Mayor Daggett will be doing remarks, and bring a book to add to the library. We'd love that. Thank you.
Councilmember House.
Nothing for me tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Spence.
Thank you, Mayor. The Open Space Commission met last night, yesterday afternoon, and heard an update on the PROS master plan consultancy that is kicking off at this time. So Parks and Rec and Open Space has a 5-year master plan that is in the works. There'll be public outreach. There'll be outreach to our relevant city divisions and commissions, and everybody should stay tuned to this master plan development for Parks, Rec, and Open Space. Thank you.
So we've been talking a lot about public safety, both at our budget retreat and this evening. The Citizens Public Safety, Public Safety Citizens Commission meets tomorrow out at Public Works on Old Route 66 from 3:30 to 5:30. The public is invited, or you can watch online, or you can go to the website I'm about to give you to watch all the old meetings and access all of the information that has been presented to this committee. And at the end of this process, I believe there are 3 more meetings of this committee. They will be making some recommendation to the city council about whether to place something on the ballot in November, and if so, what that would look like. And so it's important that the public be aware of this and be paying attention to this. And the web address is connect.flagstaffaz.gov, and you can find everything about the work of this committee there. Now, can you put up the slide? I attended the meeting last week, and it was really fascinating. So the Community Wildfire Protection Plan update, I went to this meeting last week after our budget retreat, and it's an effort between all of these entities that you see written here. Can you go down a little bit? The City of Flagstaff and the fire departments and fire districts around us, as well as the State Department of Forestry and Fire Management. And you can scan this QR code for more information and also to take the community survey, and I encourage you to do so. And that is all that I have. City Manager.
Mayor, Council, Councilmember Aslan stole my thunder a little bit, but I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce Mary Goodman, who joined us yesterday as our new Deputy City Manager. Mary has spent many years with the town of Gilbert as an assistant town manager, also worked for the League of Cities and Towns. We're so lucky to have her. We gave her a nice welcome yesterday, and we also have a welcome reception for her. Is it May 6th, I believe? So hoping you can all join, and members of the community. She's already fit right in, and we're just really happy to have her here and round out the city manager's office. I do have one other update. I did want to just provide an update. As you know, we're undergoing the educational component on our Flagstaff Regional Plan. And I just wanted to take an opportunity to remind all of you and also the community that we do have a very robust FAQ on our website that actually answers questions that have been raised about the regional plan. Just a reminder that the regional plan, that it's not regulatory and that it does not automatically change existing land entitlements. So every question that you get asked about the regional plan is included in this FAQ. And I would like to just give that website. It's www.flagstaff.az.gov/regional plan 2045. So it's a great resource and will answer all the questions that you're getting on the regional plan.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think we've all seen some questions online, as well as some kind of wild suggestions about what the regional plan is or isn't.
Correct, and I think we'll have some good updates to some of those questions by tomorrow morning added to this FAQ.
Thank you very much. All right, that looks like everything, so we are adjourned.